The following program does not have a normal intro because I was really too busy smoothing other things over to get it done. So, Ori?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. Before we get into tonight's festivities, before we get into the most base speech in the history of speeches on the internet, which is really, I don't think I'm overselling it. I don't think I'm overselling it. And I put up a poll on my YouTube community where I was like asking them, before today, who had given the most base speech on the internet. And when I say most base speech on the internet, I'm saying is it's the most base speech you can find anywhere on the internet. Like you look at them, like I think that tops the list. Now, in my poll, I included like fictional characters who have given speeches along with some true ones, but some historical speeches. But I think they all pale. When you consider the message and the context in which this speech is given, it's just in the insight. Everything about it is amazing. Before we get to that, a few things I want to share with you here. So some of you may be familiar with the fact that a woman by the name of E. Jean Carroll is suing President Trump for defamation based on him saying, I didn't rape that girl. Yeah, there goes my monetization right there. So he's like, I didn't do that. Apparently that's defamatory now, even though he was found not to have done that. I mean, it was assault he was found civilly liable for. So apparently, he's found guilty. He's found guilty as on liability instead of coming down to establishing what her damages are, which is just an astonishing thing. And one of the things that the jury is going to have to measure is her credibility. So let's look at the credibility of E. Jean Carroll. I want to just take a quick look at who is E. Jean Carroll. You might be saying that I don't know anything about her. Apparently, she was a lifelong failure until all of a sudden she got published in a writing gig in the 90s. If you saw transcripts from her testimony today, let's take a look at this woman. 75 years old now. 75 years old. And looking like she in the prime of her life. Look at her. Just a bastion of credibility. It's pretty much like listening to like Lincoln talk or something. I don't know. This is very credible. Highly credible. George Washington would be envious of her credibility. Talk to us, E. Jean. Tell us about your life. Raggedy Ann.
I call it the Mouse House because some very distinguished mice live.
This is where she lives. Out in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in upstate New York, in what she calls the Mouse House. Tell us why you call it the Mouse House again. What was that?
The Mouse House because some very distinguished mice live here. Kahneman lives in the kitchen. Tversky lives in the bedroom. This is my shed.
Okay, that's her shed. Isn't she so artsy?
And on that side are the books that most influenced me growing up. On the door are the lists of my dogs.
Chekhov's
Marky,
two H's.
Fortuna de la Spunky, Heidi, Tits, Bloody, and Hepburn.
Look at her. Bastion of credibility right there.
The streams and the rivers were dry. And it so horrified me that I came out and started painting the rocks blue to indicate that there was once a river here.
Yeah.
And then after I got done painting the rocks, I just sort of walked over here and then did that tree and then did that tree and then I did this tree. And then pretty soon I'd done this whole forest.
She painted her forest blue. This is the woman. This is the woman who's telling us what reality is. based on her best recollection of events that happened in the 90s. Hikes around her house for 3 miles every day. All right. There she's hiking. With her dog, I don't know if that's Bruno or Tits or whatever other dog that she says that her names of her dogs.
Oh my God! What's the best piece of advice I've ever given? What a horrible question.
Best piece? Oh, yeah, because she was an advice columnist. That's what her gig was. That she got some gig with Elle magazine or something. I don't know. Some magazine in New York where she was asked, where she became an advice columnist. So I guess in this little video interview collage, they asked her the best piece of advice that she's ever given.
To ask an advice column. Oh my God! Hang on. Eat, drink, and be merry. That's it. That's my advice.
That's her advice. It's astonishing she doesn't have that gig anymore. That's her car. Isn't she so artsy? Isn't she so talented? Isn't she so creative? Isn't she just like a bastion of credibility? All right. So there you go. That's E. Jean Carroll. Suing Trump for $10 million because her reputation has been damaged. Not by that video. No, it's not that video. It's by Trump saying, I didn't. That woman illegally engage in non-consensual engagements with that woman. Wow. The arc of justice is just, it's really brutal. It's really getting brutal. All right. Freedom Forever says, I love your show. Your analysis, legal case. I love the history of you and great logic. Thank you so much. Give us. I have been following you since the Rittenhouse case. Wow. And you're a member for 2 months. Woo! Good job, Freedom Forever. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Much obliged. Morgan Day. Good evening, Joe in chat. Thank you so much, Morgan. Thank you so much. And Wellesley says a homeless person who has a home. Just yeah, it's kind of you would think that yeah, I don't know. Anyhow, so there you go. That's E. Jean Carroll. Thought you should know about that. Before I get to the speech, because let me tell you got to hear this speech. I'm very torn whether I want to do the whole coping and seething thing first, because that I have flexibility on. I have a lot of flexibility. I don't know how long this speech is going to take me. You guys know what the speech is, right? You know who gave the speech today. You did hear Grape. That's correct. Great Lawgic gear tomorrow at the shop. Yeah, I gotta have a talk with you. Yeah, she thinks a lot of weird things are interesting, like being assaulted violently against your will. Has all sorts of interesting fantasies. Really strange. And no, it's definitely not. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I actually wonder if she's someone who's in. I actually wonder if E. Jean Carroll is acting under a pseudonym in my chat right now. She might be among you. Because there's one person who drops comments that I'm like, it really sounds like something E. Jean Carroll might say. My pop was still flying from Florida to Jersey a few times a year to visit family and gamble in AC in 92. He just died earlier this year. Well, so my condolences. I'm sorry about that. At 92, he was still doing that. Wow. That's pretty cool. I guess he was doing the eating and the drinking and the being of marrying. So there you go. All right. I think I'm going to go with the speech first. You guys know who gave the speech, right? You know who gave the speech. He's not one of the persons that I listed on the list. Any guesses? On who gave the speech? Let me see if in Rumble they know. You guys know who gave the speech? right. Not seeing any guesses. This is correct. One of you is right. Javier Milei. Oh my God. Oh my God. Argentinian President Javier Milei dropped the most based speech in the world. And that's not what makes it the most based speech in the internet. I mean, it was easily the most based speech that anyone's given, not named Trump in the last 15 years. But easily. I mean, some of Vivek's speeches were actually pretty good. I want to say that. A couple of his speeches, I was like, oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's pretty good. But putting that aside, seriously, unbelievably based. And what's amazing about it is that this speech happened at the WEF. There you go, at the WEF. Introduced by Herr Evil himself, Klaus Schwab. Yeah, that's right, Dr. Evil. Herr Dr. Evil introduced Javier Milei with glowing praise before he got up there and gave the most based messaging in the world, tearing down socialism as being like an evil force and globalism, just tearing it all apart. I was just like, I didn't know they'd allow him to. I'm surprised they didn't have a giant cane yanking him off the stage. What the hell were they thinking? I have no idea. But you need to hear every word of this. So let's do it. Let's hear the introduction from.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's for me great.
Seriously, if Michael Myers was just like when in Dr. Evil, like I'm surprised he didn't use this voice. Great, it's a great honor.
Great honor to welcome Javier Milei. As you know, he's the freely elected president of Argentina, and it's actually your first trip to a foreign country after you have been elected. First, congratulations for your election, and congratulations also to your sister who managed your election campaign. I think you, sometimes people would say with more radical methods, but you introduce a new...
More radical. If radical means the opposite of the people in your environment, he's about to go King Kong legendary radical.
Spirit to Argentina, making Argentina much more related to free enterprise, to entrepreneurial activities, also to bring Argentina back to the rule of law. So we have a very extraordinary person among us today. And of course, we are all eager to listen to you. And again, a very cordial welcome to the
on your first and last speech that you'll ever give in Davos.
World Economic Forum.
Eat the bugs. I just want to say it's somewhat an embarrassment for America that the most base speech on the internet is in Spanish.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Today, I'm here to tell you that the Western world is in danger. And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism.
You're the problem. You're the cancer. All you coming to this stupid WEF forum, you're the cancer.
And thereby to poverty. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world.
He's going right in.
Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me,
The root cause.
no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. When we adopted the model of freedom back in 1860, in 35 years we became a leading world power. And when we embraced collectivism over the course of the last 100 years, we saw how our citizens started to become systematically impoverished, and we dropped to spot number 140 globally. But before having...
That's astonishing how much they dropped. I mean, they were like a leading economy and they just plummeted.
The discussion, it would first be important for us to take a look at the data that demonstrate why free enterprise capitalism is not just the only possible system to end world poverty, but also that it's the only morally desirable system to achieve this. If we look at the history of economic progress, we can see how between the year 0 and the year 1800 approximately, world per capita GDP practically remained constant throughout the whole reference period. If you look at a graph of the evolution of economic growth throughout the history of humanity, you would see a hockey stick graph, an exponential function that remained constant for 90% of the time and which was exponentially triggered starting in the 19th century. The only exception to this history of stagnation was in the late 15th century with the discovery of the American continent. But for this exception, throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, global per capita GDP stagnated.
What a great way to start this off. The best way is basically going through the history of the world economy. Let's examine the history of the world economy. Such a phenomenal way to just start off a foundation for his speech as to like, how did we get to where we're at? Well, okay, first 1800 years since Jesus. Well, yeah, very stagnant, very, very stagnant. Everything kind of stayed the same for a long time, a really long time. Why did they let him speak? Makes no sense at all, much less my main MAGA Jew, Trump 2024. Amen. Amen to that. I'll tell you, thank you for the love, brother. I don't know. I'm astonished. Maybe they felt obliged because, he's a newly elected world leader. I don't know. I cannot imagine that they're going to make this mistake again.
Now, it's not just that capitalism brought about an explosion in wealth from the moment it was adopted as an economic system. But also, if you look at the data, what you will see is that growth continues to accelerate throughout the whole period.
And it's because capitalism introduced innovation. This is something when it comes to economics, I keep pointing out. You want to look historically and where we ever saw an economic boom. An economic boom is not because of the tax rate, and it's not because of war. Every time we've seen an economic boom, it has been preceded by some level of innovation that had an impact globally or nationally at the very least. Look at the 80s. You can look at, if we track through time, the boom of the 20s was following radio. Boom of the 50s, television. Boom of the 80s, computers. 90s, internet. That's how you have an economic boom. When you have something, because when there's innovation and it changes the way that humans can interact with each other, it changes everything about the way money ends up getting moved around. And it also motivates society to try and partake of these innovations. It motivates members of society to try and find ways that they can tap in. It spurs more innovation. Innovation breeds innovation. One of the problems with socialism is it is inherently stagnant. I'm going to point something out to you that when in this debate between capitalism and socialism and whether or not socialism is morally good, is operable, every time you hear people defending socialism, every single time, well, the way that people tend to defend socialism, and I'm going to talk a lot about socialism tonight as we go through this speech. But every time every time you hear anyone talking about socialism, they always try defending it, claiming that there wasn't enough socialism implemented, or the people were corrupt. Those individuals are corrupt. But if we had actually morally healthy people, that it would actually operate correctly. Even giving these people their due. Even assuming that those claims are correct, which they're not, as well as I'll discuss further during the course of tonight's show. But even if that were true, the objective of socialism is to take whatever pie we have and share it. There's no genuine objective. If anything, it kneecaps the opportunity for innovation. And that's why it must be, that's one of half a dozen reasons it must be a failure. It must be. Because when you don't have innovation, you have financial stagnation at best. So if socialism were to work beautifully as well as it possibly could, because we had George Washingtons, we just had thousands of George Washingtons who were running our government. All of a sudden, all these evil, corrupt people who we see and complain about day after day, they just boom, they found the Lord and they became good, decent, moral human beings. Every single one of them, despite all the evidence that hasn't been that way in decades, if not centuries. But even if we could snap our fingers and make them moral and run socialism as well as possible, the best case scenario would be innovative stagnation, because there's no motivation for innovation. You get the same thing. You get the same thing no matter what you do. So that must lead to financial stagnation. But in a best case scenario, it's not digging you out of a hole. It's simply not drowning. Socialism in its best case scenario. And this is why when all these people say, well, it was bad people implementing it, that's why it failed. It's not a question as to whether or not a system can fail or succeed. It's a matter as to, will this lead to growth? That's what's really important. It's not a matter of, can we tread water? Treading water should never be your goal, but that's the only goal of socialism, is let's find that it's a claim that, hey, we could implement socialism and still manage to tread water. You know what? When you tread water, you're still being pulled out into the tides. That's not good enough. You need innovation if you're going to have a successful economy. But he brings up some phenomenal points that I had never thought about before. And he triggered new thoughts in my mind. And the way he comes after the WEF here is just unbelievable. Go for it, Javier.
Throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, the per capita GDP growth rate remained stable at around 0.02% annually, so almost no growth. Starting in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the compound annual growth rate was 0.66%. And at that rate, in order to double per capita GDP, you would need some 107 years. Now, if you look at the period between the year 1900 and the year 1950, the growth rate accelerated to 1.66% a year. So you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years, we could double the world's per capita GDP. This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years. That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by over 15 times, which meant a boom in growth that lifted 90% of the global population out of poverty. We should remember that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, and that figure dropped to 5% by the year 2020.
Think about that. 95% of the world was impoverished in 1800, and today it's 5% of the world. That's what capitalism did. That's never happened under anything socialism. That's right. 90%, 9 out of 10 people on the planet who would be impoverished are not because of capitalism. That's what capitalism has done for the world. You see the Wef indigenous shaman coughing ritual? No, I didn't see that. I don't know what that means. Tonight we wear our tracksuits in honor of Milei. Afuera! Afuera! Don't tread on me. Godspeed, you glorious, insane man. Indeed.
Prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxa has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that capitalism is evil because it's individualistic and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic, of course, with the money of others. So they therefore advocate for social justice. But this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times, in my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. Or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes?
You ever hear a world leader say taxes thievery? You ever hear any world leader ever say taxes thievery? Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom. Those who promote social justice, the advocates, start with the idea that the whole economy is a pie that can be shared differently. But that pie is not a given. It's wealth that is generated in what Israel Kirzner, for instance, calls a market discovery process.
Now, I just want to point out that that's an important thing for people to remember, and that is that the size of the pie is not a given, and the growth or shrinking of that pie can and will change depending on the economic system that you employ. And that's one of the flaws in the people who promote socialism, is that they assume that this pie is the size that it is and that it will continue growing in a socialistic environment, even though there's zero basis for anyone to contribute towards enlarging the overall pie, because you won't see any benefit from it. Why would you bust your tail trying to make the pie bigger, finding some new innovative way to make the pie bigger, if in fact you personally are not going to have any sort of benefit from it?
If the goods or services offered by a business are not wanted, the business will fail unless it adapts to what the market is demanding. If they make a good quality product at an attractive price, they will do well and produce more. So the market is a discovery process in which the capitalists will find the right path as they move forward. But if the state punishes capitalists when they're successful and gets in the way of the discovery process, they will destroy their incentives, and the consequence is that they will produce less, the pie will be smaller, and this will harm society as a whole. Collectivism, by inhibiting...
And that's the thing, is that they basically, they just ignore the fact that when you harm that individual, it must harm society. It must. Because you're basically forgetting about the blessings that come from the likes of a guy who today is evil in Bill Gates. But let's face it, his innovation of the personal home computer has forever changed the world. So, you know, I said for a long time, long before I was on social media and long before he became some crazy cartoonish freak who's, you know, who has all sorts of wacky ideologies. Today he's become like, you know, public enemy number 7 on the list. That, which I should produce a top 10 public enemy. I should do that. That's a really good idea. But the point that I always made was, yeah, at that time in the 90s and the early aughts, he was the wealthiest man on the planet. And I said, power to him. Power to him. If you change the entire world and that makes you a crazy multi-billionaire, God bless you. Everyone should bless you. Every human on earth should bless you. You made their lives better. And the fact that you have amassed that wealth isn't harming them. But there's constant need to look up and say, but he's got this, and he's got that. It's like, just, is your overall life better? That's a healthy mindset instead of one that's driven by envy and greed.
Inhibiting these discovery processes and hindering the appropriation of discoveries ends up binding the hands.
I know he cheated. I know all these people, Steve Jobs and all this other stuff. Okay, whatever. You want to say he didn't deserve the pie? All right.
Of entrepreneurs and prevents them from offering better goods and services at a better price. So how come that academia, international organizations, economic theory and politics demonize an economic system that has not only lifted out of extreme poverty 90% of the world's population, but has continued to do this faster and faster, and this is morally superior and just. Thanks to free trade capitalism, it is
it's so weird that people think that you're obsessed with Trump, Eugene. Sorry, Linda.
To be seen that the world is now living its best moment. Never in all of mankind's or humanity's history has there been a time of more prosperity than today. This is true for all. The world of today has more freedom, is rich, is more peaceful and prosperous. And this is particularly true for countries that have more freedom and have economic freedom and respect the property rights of individuals, because countries that have more freedom are 12 times richer than those that are repressed. And the lowest decile in terms of distribution in free countries are better off than 90% of the population of repressed countries. And poverty is 25 times lower, and extreme poverty is 50 times lower. And citizens in free countries live 25% longer than citizens in repressed countries. Now, what is it that we mean when we talk about libertarianism? And let me quote the words of the greatest authority on freedom in Argentina, Professor Alberto Venegas Lich Jr., who says that libertarianism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression, in defense of the right to life, liberty, and property. Its fundamental institutions being private property, markets free from state intervention, free competition, the division of labor, and social cooperation, as part of which success is achieved only by serving others with goods of better quality or at a better price. In other words, capitalists Successful business people are social benefactors who, far from appropriating the wealth of others, contribute to the general well-being.
Yeah, but they call that when if you try enabling that, they call that trickle down economics, which somehow has been like poisoned as being like the root of all evil, or I guess the root of basis to have envy for others.
A successful entrepreneur is a hero. And this is the model that we are advocating for the Argentina of the future, a model based on the fundamental principles of libertarianism, the defense of life, of freedom, and of property. Now, if free enterprise capitalism and economic freedom have proven to be extraordinary instruments to end poverty in the world, and we are now at the best time in the history of humanity, it is worth asking why I say that the West is endangered. And I say this precisely because in those of our countries that should defend the values of the free market, private property, and the other institutions of libertarianism, sectors of the political and economic establishment, some due to mistakes in their...
Those of you who joined late, this is Argentinian President Javier Milei. He's the newly elected president who is based as hell. And he is speaking in Davos at the World Economic Forum and explaining to them why socialism is morally empty and a backward philosophy for anyone who has a genuine interest in bettering mankind.
Theoretical framework and others, due to a greed for power, are undermining the foundations of libertarianism, opening up the doors to socialism and potentially condemning us to poverty, misery, and stagnation. It should never be forgotten that socialism is always and everywhere an impoverishing phenomenon that has failed in all countries where it's been tried out. It's been a failure economically, socially, culturally, and it also murdered over 100 million human beings. The essential problem in the West today is not just that we need to come to grips with those who, even after the fall of the Berlin Wall...
And by the way, I will submit to you that the fact that socialism bankrupts society is not, for those who care about socialism, those who push socialism. I'm not talking about the useful idiots who follow along because they're too stupid to see through the rhetoric, to see past the end of their nose as far as what's coming 5 minutes down the road, in their lust for seeming to be altruistic and morally superior. So they turn themselves into useful idiots. But the ones who are actually guiding the useful idiots, the ones who deem themselves as the gods of humanity, the wealthy elitists whose objective is to try and enrich themselves by spreading more socialistic policies. They're the ones who are promoting it. They're the ones who are pushing it further along. They're the ones who are guiding the useful idiots. To them, the fact that it's impoverishing the world is not a drawback of socialism. That's a feature. It's a key feature. The fact that it impoverishes the world is a key feature to them. Because the more impoverished the world is, the more desperately they will look to you, the morally superior, or not morally superior, but the wealthy elitist leader. The more you look to big daddy government, the more impoverished you are. Look at how they've used this every 4 years when it comes to an election cycle with the black community. Oh, you're poor. You really need us. That's what the Democrats have done. Oh, you're still poor 4 years from now? Oh, okay. Well, we'll fix that for you. We'll fix that from you. And 4 years later, we'll fix it for you again. Poverty is not a drawback to socialism. It's a feature.
And the overwhelming empirical evidence continue to advocate for impoverishing socialism. But there's also our own leaders, thinkers, and academics who, relying on a misguided theoretical framework, undermine the fundamentals of the system that has given us the greatest expansion of wealth and prosperity in our history. The theoretical framework to which I refer is that of neoclassical economic theory, which designs a set of instruments that unwillingly or without meaning to ends up serving the intervention by the state, socialism, and social degradation. The problem with neoclassicals is that the model they fell in love with does not map reality, so they put down their mistakes to supposed market failures rather than reviewing the premises of the model. On the pretext of a supposed market failure, regulations are introduced which only create distortions in the price system, prevent economic calculus, and therefore also prevent saving, investment, and growth. This problem lies mainly in the fact that not even supposedly libertarian economists understand what the market is, because if they did understand, it would quickly be seen that it's impossible for there to be something along the lines of market failures. The market is not a mere graph describing a curve of supply and demand. The market is a mechanism for social cooperation.
Yeah, are you asking me like definitionally, or are you asking me? I think you need to have, when does cult leader become a dictator? It's an interesting question. I guess probably when he's no longer looking out for the interests of those who he is leading. But I've never met a cult leader, so I can't answer that question. Looks like someone's going to get the next color revolution. I know what you're saying. I already called that once.
Cooperation, where you voluntarily exchange ownership rights. Therefore, based on this definition, talking about a market failure is an oxymoron. There are no market failures. If transactions are voluntary, the only context in which there can be a market failure is if there is coercion.
This is a really interesting economic theory he's espousing here, saying there's no such thing as a market failure. It's just the market doing what the market is. And sometimes the market's going to crush people. That's just what the market does. That's part of how things operate. That's not a market failure. That's just the market correcting for something that was pushed, that is no longer needed by the market.
Only one that is able to coerce generally is the state, which holds a monopoly on violence. Consequently, if someone considers that there is a market failure, I would suggest that they check to see if the state intervention involved. And if they find that that's not the case, I would suggest that they check again, because obviously there's a mistake. Market failures do not exist. An example.
So if there is a market failure, you can blame the government because they're the only ones who have a monopoly on violence, and which is true. And if you look and you don't see the state intervention, that's what led to this whole market failure. Look again, because it's there. Because that's the only way you can possibly have a market failure. And by that, those of you who might be a little bit confused by this, I think what he's trying to say is, for example, let's look at the housing bubble crisis of 2008. Okay, look at how everything just collapsed, and we ended up hitting this recessionary period, which just stagnated out for eons, or as basically until we managed to get rid of Barack Obama. And look at what led to that. Why is it that there was an overpricing, overvaluation for real property? And the answer is simple. It's because there was government intervention, which was motivating lenders to try and loan out as much money as possible, irrespective of what the market dictated they should be loaning out. You have government intervention, which is creating a market failure. But if there is not that government intervention trying to push a policy forward, trying to push forward and expedite expedite the ability for people to own a home, because they just felt it was morally better for society for there to be a pot in every chicken and a chicken in every pot and a pot in every home, and that home should be owned by every human being on earth. That desperation to try and put the economy on steroids was a state intervention into the market, which led to a market failure. And it was a market failure, but it's crystal clear. And if you look through market failures historically, you will likely find the same thing every single time. But the state just pushed something, and that led to the market failure.
Of these so-called market failures described by the neoclassicals are the concentrated structures of the economy. However, without increasing returns to scale functions whose count...
Oh, have you read David Icke response tweet on X? Response tweet to what? Response to this speech? No. I'll see if I can dig that up. David Icke. I don't even know who that is. I'm curious. I'm all curious now. David Icke. All right, I'll go through it afterwards. I found it. Thank you. Too bad no crowd reactions like the words or speeches. I think he'd be booed by that crowd. Carpet Davis with Jane. Good to see you, Sean. Good to see you. Thank you, cheesy heretics.
Apart are the concentrated structures of the economy. We couldn't possibly explain economic growth since the year 1800 until today. Isn't this interesting? Since the year 1800 onwards, with population multiplying by 8 or 9 times, per capita GDP grown by over 15 times. So there are growing returns, which took extreme poverty from 95% to 5%. However, the presence of growing returns involves concentrated structures, what we would call a monopoly. How come then that something that has generated so much well-being for the neoclassical theory is a market failure? Neoclassical economists think outside of the box. When the model fails, you shouldn't get angry with reality, but rather with the model and change it. The dilemma faced by the neoclassical model is that they say they wish to perfect the functioning of the market by attacking what they consider to be failures. But in so doing, they don't just open up the doors to socialism, but also go against economic growth. An example, regulating monopolies, destroying their profits and destroying growing returns automatically would destroy economic growth. In other words, whenever you want to correct a supposed market failure inexorably, as a result of not knowing what the market is, or as a result of having fallen in love with a failed model, you are opening up the doors to socialism and condemning people to poverty. However, faced with the theoretical demonstration that state intervention is harmful and the empirical evidence that it has failed couldn't have been otherwise, the solution to be proposed by collectivists is not greater freedom, but rather greater regulation, which creates a downward spiral of regulations until we're all poorer and the life of all of us depends on a bureaucrat sitting in a luxury office. Given the dismal failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances in the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system and replaced this with other supposed social conflicts which are just as harmful to life as a community and to economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Libertarianism already provides for equality of these sexes. The cornerstone of our creed says that all humans are created equal, that we all have the same unalienable rights granted by the Creator, including life, freedom, and ownership. All that this radical feminism agenda has led to is greater state intervention to hinder the economic process, giving a job to bureaucrats who have not contributed anything to society.
Now, I will say this. I don't embrace libertarianism to the degree that he seems to imply he does. I think that libertarianism is a flawed way. It is sort of like... The problem I have with libertarianism is it's sort of saying that I cannot use logic to deduce morality to the extent that it may ever intercede on another third party. And to me, that's a grave failing of libertarianism. Now, my leanings are far closer to libertarianism than they are toward probably any other model, but I sort of look at it as a tweaked, my perspective as being more of a tweaked type of libertarianism. But so I do think that there's something that is morally healthy about saving people from themselves. I think that's more moral to save people from themselves than to let them drown. In the same way, it's more a libertarian perspective, if you take it to its extreme on a one-on-one hypothetical, would be, well, let this person do whatever they want. So if they decide to get coked out of their minds and go for a swim in the ocean, well, let them do what they want. Or get behind the wheel of a car, let them do what they want. There's a certain freedom that they have. Who are you to tell them what to do? They're grown. Let them do what they want. It sort of seems like at a certain point, morality dictates that there has to be some guardrails to help people from harming themselves. And that's a healthier society than just complete freedom for those who have minds that are weak or childish or too easily bend to their own baser natures. But
examples, ministries of women or international organizations.
But in all other respects, I think that for the most part, libertarianism is a very healthy way to look at the world.
Devoted to promoting this agenda. Another conflict presented by socialists is that of humans against nature, claiming that we human beings damage the planet, which should be protected at all costs, even going as far as advocating for population control mechanisms or the bloody abortion agenda. Unfortunately, these harmful ideas...
He's even going after abortion. He's even going after abortion. Just wait, he gets the feminism also. He gets the feminism too. Markets have cycles. If those cycles aren't allowed to happen, you have crashes. The only thing that tries to control those cycles is government. It's true, yeah. And it's because, and part of it is a selfish motivation of, I don't want to crash on my watch, and everyone's going to blame me. No one wants to be known as Herbert Hoover. North versus South Korea since the 50s. Case closed. Well said. Indeed.
Have taken a strong hold in our society.
No, but you don't understand. The reason North socialism has failed in North Korea is because, you know, they've had the evil dictators. They haven't had the good dictators.
Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world, and this they have achieved by appropriating the media, culture, universities, and also international.
Oh, he's genuinely based. He is genuinely based. He's the president of Argentina. But look, we have it's constitutionally established that you need to be born in this country in order to become president. But I'd think about trying to figure out how to make an exception for this dude if he ever wants to run here.
The latter case is the most serious one, probably, because these are institutions that have enormous influence on political and economic decisions of the countries that make up the multilateral organizations. Fortunately, there's more and more of us who are daring to make our voices heard, because we see that if we don't truly and decisively fight against these ideas, the only possible fate is for us to have increasing levels of state regulation, socialism, poverty, and less freedom, and therefore will be having worse standards of living. The West has unfortunately already started to go along this path. I know to many it may sound ridiculous to suggest that the West has turned to socialism, but it's only ridiculous if you only limit yourself to the traditional economic definition of socialism, which says that it's an economic system where the state owns the means of production. This definition, in my view, should be updated in the light of current circumstances. Today, states don't need to directly control the means of production to control every aspect of the lives of individuals. With tools such as printing money, debt, subsidies, controlling the interest rate, price controls, and regulations to correct the so-called market failures, they can control the lives and fates of millions of individuals. This is how we come to the point where,
by the way, look back in the 60s and the economic recession of the 70s. You'll find we had you had no real innovation, and you had minimum wage, which is market intervention.
Using different names or guises, a good deal of the generally accepted political offers.
I think I said the words market intervention, but my brain, I was thinking state intervention.
In most Western countries are collectivist variants, whether they proclaim to be openly communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, social democrats, national socialists, Democrat Christians, Christian Democrats, neo-Keynesians, progressive, populist, nationalists, or globalists. At bottom, there are no major differences. They all say that the state should steer all aspects of the lives of individuals. They all defend a model contrary to that one which led humanity to the most spectacular progress in its history. We have come here today to invite the rest of the countries in the Western world to get back on the path of prosperity, economic freedom, limited government, and unlimited respect for private property are essential elements for economic growth. And the impoverishment produced by collectivism is no fantasy, nor is it an inescapable fate. But it's a reality that we Argentines know very well. We have lived through this, we have been through this, because as I said earlier, ever since we decided to abandon the model of freedom that had made us rich, we have been caught up in a downward spiral, as part of which we are poorer and poorer day by day. So this is something we have lived through, and we are here to.
And like I said, that's not considered by those who are pushing socialism to be a failing of socialism. That is a feature, one of the key features.
Warn you about what can happen if the countries in the Western world that became rich through the model of freedom stay on this path of servitude. The case of Argentina is an empirical demonstration that no matter how rich you may be or how much you may have in terms of natural resources or how skilled your population may be or educated or how many bars of gold you may have in the central bank, if measures are adopted that hinder the free functioning of markets, free competition, free price systems, if you hinder trade, if you attack private property, the only possible fate is poverty. Therefore, in concluding, I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors. You're heroes. You're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
Long live freedom, damn it. Long live freedom, damn it. Man. I wasn't kidding when I said it's the most based speech on the internet. I wasn't kidding. Come on. That was amazing. Let's hear from David Icke. David Icke, someone asked me to look at his response to this speech, and I'm going to pull it up here. Let's pull it up. Let's see. Just so we know who David Icke is. Official Twitter of groundbreaking author and public speaker David Icke. All right. New book, The Dream. There we go. Here we go. I'm sure he's very highly educated. I'm sure he's very, very highly educated. This is him right here. New book, The Dream, available at shop.davidicke.com. All right. I heard that Milei's speech at the WEF champions freedom, so I listened. It doesn't. Okay. It seems to move power and control from governments to corporations if you listen carefully, and that's happening anyway. No. It's not that he's saying stand up for the people who are like super wealthy. It's like, all right, so I'm going to just basically reframe what he's saying here and look at it individually, applying it to basically big tech, big pharma, and everyone who's a billionaire. What he doesn't say is that governments and corporations are owned by the same global cult. So either way, the same cabal is in control. That is such a ridiculous perspective. It's not a matter of who's in control, that these are the good people to be in control versus these are the bad people to be in control. This is such a simplistic perspective that he's throwing out here. It's not a matter of the names of the people who are in control. It's how you attain your position. There's a difference between someone being elected and then say, I'm going to take this person's money or take this company's money and use it and redistribute it, versus someone building wealth. And here's the difference. The person who's building wealth invariably is building wealth for society, as opposed to the person who's just standing there like some manager redistributing that wealth, who isn't. Is there going to be some overlap because money is going to infuse with politics? 100% that's going to happen. But to say it's the same people it's such a simplistic, it's such an oversimplification as to how the process works, that it's like it's intentional. I don't think this guy is a stupid human being. I never met him before, but he writes well. I'm assuming he's not a stupid human being. I think this is intentionally framed in a way that's designed to push whatever belief system he's subscribing to here. The obsession with economic growth for its own sake is a classic free-for-all childlike economics, in which the strongest, most wealthy, and powerful prevail without the most basic checks and balances. It's not simply... Economic growth is merely the amount of money spent on goods and services. So all the negative things we don't want to happen are ticked as positive by economic growth. If money changes hands, profits are made. Economic growth is merely the amount of money spent on goods and services. When you say money, I'm wondering when he's saying this, whether he's using a yardstick of the amount of actual cash, like the numbers of dollars, or actual value that's being exchanged. Freedom to be exploited by billionaires without redress is not free. You know what? It's much better. It's much better than legalized coercive takings. At least there you have a fighting chance. Corporate monopolies with unchecked power is not freedom. And I'll tell you this much: I don't believe in corporate monopolies with unchecked power. I don't believe in that. But that's what he's trying to portray as like this is what Javier Milei is championing. Like I said, this is all a matter of trying to frame it. And he starts with, he goes, if you listen carefully, it seeks to move power from control from governments to corporations if you listen carefully. Really? He starts with that little wrinkle as his interpretation and then says, based on this interpretation, I'm going to tell you how flawed his perspective is. He talks about capitalism, and what he's describing in truth is cartelism. Look, if David Icke had described this as saying what you are hoping is capitalism invariably morphs into cartelism, I would give him credit for at least having intellectual integrity. But to me, this reeks of a lack of intellectual integrity. You can say, look, that's how it manifests. You might start off at a place that you're rooting for capitalism, but ultimately capitalism is going to morph into cartelism. Meaning instead of it being, the small guy building himself up from something that's, into something great, because that's impossible to happen. There's no such thing as a Sam Walton building Walmart. That's impossible. Never happened ever in American history. It's impossible for Jeff Bezos to build up from a basic nothing into being one of the wealthiest people on earth. It's impossible for Elon Musk's of the world to grow from basically being nothing to the richest man on the planet. Totally impossible. It's all cartelism. Everyone looking out for each other. So stupid. This is so stupid. But he labels Javier Milei as one-dimensional. It's the playground. You challenge white with black and black with white, while the cult sits laughing in the shades of gray, controlling both. Oh, this is to me is economics that includes all the clever artfulness of an E. Jean Carroll. Milei's child and grown-ups playground, appearing to challenge power while handing it over to the already super powerful. Which do you want? The free rigged market, the free rigged market tyranny run riot, or state dictated communist tyranny? Neither, thanks. I'm an adult. I want freedom and justice for all, not the few. And whether it's Milei or Schwab, the few get the spoils and the rest get the crumbs in the tyranny. Oh, so what are you saying would be better? What's better to you? You're basically saying both systems suck. That's essentially what you're saying. What about all the historical background as to the success of capitalism? Or do you disagree with his assessment that we went from having 220 years ago that 95% of the world was impoverished, and today that 5% is impoverished? But that's not an actual growth. Or is that not attributable to capitalism? That just happened. That just happened organically without there being any sort of real new change in our economic system. It's like you're so clever. I love when people think that they're so educated and so clever that they can just ignore reality because it doesn't, and they can ignore history and reality because it doesn't conform to whatever agenda they've decided to buy into. Hello. Guess what day it is? Julie? Mike? Lol, sorry. Wait, what? Guess what day it is? January 17th, 2017, 24. Okay, Jenny, I have no idea. What? Am I missing something? Do you all know what day it is? What? Commercial? What does that even mean? Now I'm gonna Google it. I've never even heard of this. Oh, just in general, it's Hump Day because it's Wednesday. Okay.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's Hump Day.
Woo-hoo!
Ronnie, how happy are folks who save hundreds of dollars switching to Geico?
I'd say happier than a camel on Wednesday.
Hump Get happy. Get Geico. 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. All right, you just took over my show for like 3 minutes, and I gave you major props for it. Well done in general. Jack 812, welcome. I don't remember seeing you. I think this might be your first time ever super chatting on my channel, and if so, if I'm mistaken, I apologize. And if so, I say welcome to the click. It's a very specialized click. Take David Icke with a grain of salt. Mixes truth with crazy, like lizard people and demonic conspiracies, discrediting real conspiracies. Yeah, I took him with like a barrel of salt. Speaking of which, I'm glad you mentioned grain of salt. Speaking of which, in case you haven't been outside like in the last 48 hours, it is freaky cold. Now, we had this whole mist of snow that sort of fell on us here in the northern New Jersey region, which wasn't really a snowfall in the sense that there was much of an accumulation, but there was enough accumulation, I want to say like yay high, that if you didn't address it in timely manner, it became like really, really rock solid, because they was followed up by this crazy wicked cold. I did not appreciate just how cold it was today. Sharing a little insight with you. So this morning, yesterday I did some shoveling, but I gotta tell you, I got like a third of the way done and I was wiped. It was like just trying to like dig through it. I got a third of the way done. So this morning, Lady Lawgic comes over to me and she's like, maybe you salt the walk there? You know, just throw a little salt out there. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Now, normally when she asks me to do something, she sort of, especially if she asks me in the morning, she's hoping it's going to get done, like, let's say by like 3 o'clock. So at 3:30, I looked at my clock and I was like, ooh, because I keep a clock on my wrist. I was looking at my clock and I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I went outside, and that we had the bag of salt that was actually sitting outside for I don't even know how long. And I didn't appreciate the fact that when it's sitting out there in a bag in this weather, the salt itself like feels as cold as ice. So I'm like digging in and I'm like basically trying to like spurt salt in all the icy patches, which there was a lot of icy patches, not going to kid you. And I had to tell you, and I'm starting to feel like really cold, because who the heck wears gloves, right? I don't wear gloves. So I'm digging in there and I'm sprint, and I did this for like, it took me 40 minutes. And by the time I was done, I cannot even tell you the level of pain in my fingers. Like I was like, it's like I felt like they had been like removed, like they were still removed and yet attached, as if they had like each of my fingers had just basically like bullet holes in them. I was like laying in bed, just like trying to find some way to warm up like my bones that actually had gotten cold. That actually like got cold to the bone. It was brutal. It's brutal. So there you go. A little global warming. It would go a long way. I'm not sure why I shared that story, but I was sharing with you my day of pain. It was a very painful day. It was painful. So yeah, moral of the story, I guess, is get gloves if you're going to be putting salt out. Really not much more moral you can get from that. To undermine our liberty with equity, the polar opposite of equality, these people use nuance to refuse logic with using socioeconomics, evil. To undermine our liberty with equity, which is the polar opposite of equality, these people use nuance to refuse logic while using socioeconomics. Yeah, it is evil. I ordered a pink tracksuit. Better color for me. Don't kick me out. Cult members 69. Okay, let me tell you something. All right. So, member of the following, American Dreamer. In case you're not wondering, if you're wondering what that is, because you're new to the station, you're new to the podcast here, I'll just share with you this thought, and that is, the show is called The Following Program. The channel is called Good Logic. The show is called The Following Program. People who become members of the show become followers. That's what their just title is. that just because you call followers doesn't mean you're in a cult type of cult at all, because it's not a cult. It's not at all a cult type of cult. Like, not at all a cult type of cult. There's no Kool-Aid, no self-harm, no harming others, no virgin sacrifices, no spaceships, no track suits that are mandatory, mild farming, no self-harm, no jabbing yourself in the leg or in the arm or in the ear, no squirrel mutilations, no goat sacrifices, no writing red rum in blood all over the walls. None of that. It's like not at all a cult type of cult. And I'm not the leader of the following. I'm not the leader. I'm just a follower, just like you. The following is really just about greater community unity, of course, personal growth. Yes, shoveling snow, not tunnels. Yeah, so I don't know why pink tracksuit. I am in talks with like 4 people who want to like build me a merch store. There may be an offering of tracksuits in there eventually. There may be, but they're definitely not mandatory tracksuits. Like they're not mandatory. Maybe recommended. We'll see. We'll see. All right. So there's Javier Milei. We got some feedback there from David Icke. With his thoughts. And I want to move on. Because this was an interesting. I was looking through some interesting perspectives from the left about reacting to Donald Trump's dominance in Iowa. Some people not too happy about this at all. Like this woman right here. Well, several of these women. I wasn't thinking of her, but
yesterday, Republican candidate.
Ooh, I should watch this in speed that humans watch it, as opposed to making you all think that I'm an alien who can just absorb information at twice human speed.
Nikki Haley spent weeks, not yesterday, but she spent weeks doing damage control after.
This isn't even the one I wanted. What the heck is this? Come on, Michael, you're doing a terrible job giving me feeds.
Yesterday, Republican voters braved sub-zero temperatures to cast their votes in the Iowa caucus, which can give a preview of which candidate the party is leaning towards making.
You heard Bette Midler there in the background giving her classic groan, which I don't even know if that's like frustration or her way of expressing like some sort of physical joy.
The nominee, you know who. He dominated with 51% of the vote. Ron DeSantis came in with 21% of the vote, narrowly beating Nikki Haley, who garnered 19% of the vote. And here's what they all had to say about it. Take a look.
I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together. I want to congratulate Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. We're all having a good time together.
Because of your support, in spite of all of that they threw at us.
By the way, he has become the whiniest, bitchiest, fetchiest, like loser. Every day, it's like he's become more and more humiliating to anyone who's been supporting him. It's hilarious to watch. He's literally melting in front of our eyes.
Everyone against us.
Everyone's against us. Everyone's against us. I don't know. Maybe it's funny. Maybe he figures that that's what worked for Trump. That's what was endearing about Trump. Because I'm not going to kid you. Trump, when people went after him, he would complain about it. But then we started seeing, it's actually really true. They really are going after him in ways that no president's ever been going after before. So yeah, sort of a little bit, but but who's really faced the gun? Not Donald Trump with 4 indictments. No, it's Ron DeSantis. Everyone's gunning for Ron. I can't even imagine in what way even a DeSimp would sit there thinking like, wow, they really gunned for DeSantis. They're really going hard after DeSantis specifically. That was the goal, was to take out DeSantis. Like, in what way was there a targeted effort against you, Ronald? If there are no virgin sacrifices, why did you immolate Pisco in front of us the other day? Nice. Love it. Thank you. Katie, new member of the following. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the following. I just went through all the rules. Otherwise, I would do it all over again. But I don't like being repetitive. Can you run a cult color poll so we can comply? A cult color poll, like what? I don't even know what that means. What's a cult color poll, Aaron? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Ron Zabeto screams he's an alpha. I'm really an alpha. Listen to me. I'm really an alpha. Okay. I'm smart. I got skills. Pop never gave me a chance. I'm an alpha. I assume it's got to be. It's not at all a cult type of cult. It's not. It's not. Run away. All right, let's hear Mr. Alpha here, who's been a victim. He's a victim. He's been oppressed.
We've got our ticket punched out of Iowa.
Yeah, your ticket wasn't just punched out of Iowa. It was kicked. It was spanked. It was slapped up. Your ticket was a victim of domestic violence. Okay, your ticket is wearing dark sunglasses so that no one can see your ticket's eyes. That's your ticket. Okay, your ticket is suffering PTSD from everything that happened to your ticket. He got his ticket punched out of Iowa. My God, his ticket was left in a dumpster for dead in Iowa. They didn't just get punched. They got shot, got mutilated, stabbed. That's what happened to his ticket in Iowa. We got a ticket punched out of Iowa. It's like, I want to meet the bouncer who left those black and blue marks on your ticket, Ron. What does that even mean? We got a ticket punched out of Iowa. Like what would have been you not getting your ticket punched out of Iowa? Finishing like with 3%? Unbelievable. Punched out of Iowa. Very exciting. Very exciting. Let's get punched out of Iowa. Run over St. DeSantis. Got a ticket punched out of Iowa. I feel bad for his ticket. I feel his ticket's getting like counseling, like I'm in an abusive relationship with Ron. Or I'm in an abusive relationship with Iowa. That's what his ticket is calling like a domestic violence hotline. I'm in a very bad relationship with Iowa. Oh my God. Hi, I'm Ron's ticket. And yeah. No, don't worry. Don't worry. Pretty soon we'll get to meet your New Hampshire ticket. We'll see how badly that one gets blown up. Set on fire. I wonder what would have been a loss. The guy finished like with a record, an all-time record, clobbering. The previous record was 10%. He lost by 30. That's astonishing. The highest margin out of Iowa by a non-incumbent was 10%. 30.
I can safely say tonight Iowa made this Republican primary a two-person race.
Delusional. No one even she can't explain what the hell she was thinking when she said this.
Yeah, between.
Look at Whoopi's face. Whoopi's like, what? You finished third. What? Whoopi's face there is it's pretty funny. Let's do that. Let's catch that again.
Primary, a two-person race.
my gosh. It's been a long time since Whoopi did anything that made me laugh. But that one did it. That one did it. Oh my God. I don't know why she has Damon Wayans' haircut, but yeah. That's a little weird. It's a little weird. That's not the sort of thing that make me laugh, though. And Damon Wayans' haircut's not. That face, though. That face. That punim.
Yeah, between Trump and Biden. That's what it looked like to me.
I don't know what she was referring to. I'm hoping for insight from the table, because I didn't know what she was talking about. But,
so,
yeah.
Honestly, it's disappointing as a non-Trump supporter to
Yeah, as a DeSantis supporter, you think it's disappointing? But didn't you get your ticket? Wasn't your ticket punched out at Iowa?
An Iowan.
And an Iowa. Well, let me offer some color to this, though, to clarify this. It's disappointing to see that come out of Iowa, but let me add a little perspective and context. That's very important. Only 5% of the population of the state caucuses. So when you see Iowa swept, or Trump swept Iowa. No, he did not. He swept 5% of the population. He
only got 5% of the population. In like negative 40-degree temperature, they came out for him.
13% of registered Republicans in the state of Iowa. 13% of the party showed up for that. And only 3 times in the past 8 Republican caucuses have they even predicted the candidate. So although I am a proud Iowa.
It's a simp cope. Look, I don't even know who this chick is. Not going to kid you. I have no idea who this chick is. But one thing I know about this show, The View, is that they basically say the only decent looking woman that we're going to have on this panel is going to be the Republican. And she's going to probably be blonde. So we're going to get a decent looking blonde. And she's going to be our conservative voice, which invariably is a neocon voice. So I don't know if she's, one of them naughty Nikki fans, or one of them the simps. I don't know what she is, but I know she's a Lincoln Project type. I know that, and I'm almost certain she's the conservative. She's the conservative one.
And we love our caucus time because it makes you feel seen in a country where Iowa, we admittedly lead simple lives. Like, nobody's checking on us. We're fine. We love the caucuses. We didn't earn it. We just get it historically. It's important to know those numbers when you're reading headlines, because the headlines don't give you context. These are small numbers, and it's very important to remember that.
So what did you say, 5%?
This was shared with me by Lost in Law and Locals. Nate Silver saying, Trump won by 30 points. What are we doing here, folks? 10 months left. Copium supplies are going to be dangerous low if we keep consuming them. Why responding to Eric Swalwell saying, Trump got smoked last night in Iowa? Yeah, that's what Eric Swalwell says. Trump got smoked. Follow Simon WDC for details. Bottom line, more people live in my suburban hometown than the number that voted for Trump last night. Ooh. Just over 50K, and nearly half the voters voted against him. Show me the headlines if this happened to Biden. Biden is an incumbent. He's an incumbent. Idiot. Today's Pod Save America also breaks this down. At his suggestion, I actually listened to today's Pod Save America. I did. I was thinking about sharing that with y'all. Not the entire thing. It's 55 minutes long, but maybe we'll listen to a little bit of it. Because they had a little bit of cope going on there too. There's a lot of cope going around.
5% of the entire.
But they're so excited to say 5%, 5%. Everyone who studied this said that if there was a greater percentage of people that came out, the people who stayed home, because here's what the numbers break down. Sorry to tell you this, little Madame de Simp here, okay? But the numbers break down that Trump's most favorable demographic shift has come amongst those over 30. Those over 30 are the ones who are most supportive of him currently. And who do you think is more likely to show up versus who's more likely to stay home? Some elderly person when it's 12 degrees outside, or a younger person? So yeah, the numbers were definitely deflated. But if the numbers had not been deflated because of crazy cold weather, it would have been a greater romp. You're trying to say this is not enough of a romp because he only got 51% and broke the historic record for Iowa for the margin of victory over second place by 3 times the previous historic high. 3 times. 3 times. 3 times the previous high was 10%. He got 30. He only got that. And you want to say, well, it's only reflecting a very small percentage. If there was a greater percentage, everyone says he would have done even better. If it wasn't 6 degrees out, everyone thinks he would have done even better because the people more likely to stay home are the older people. But you're trying to sit here in your little salty tears, say, it's only 5%, it's only 5%. Honey, if it was 12% that showed up there, he probably would have won by 40 points.
Entire voting population in the state showed up.
But this is what the 5% voted for. They voted for a guy who today had to come to New York to show up in court in a case against...
She has such a heavy New York accent. It makes me crazy. I don't like when people talk with a really heavy New York accent. This is what people are voting for. What do you got to drop such a heavy New York accent for?
The woman that a federal judge has already said he raped. That is...
Here we go. A federal judge has said this.
This is who you voted for.
Yeah.
For someone who has lost so many times now that this applies to him.
Oh, good one. You seem like a really mature political commentator by saying, "Ooh, you're this." This is what America's watching. This is what white women are watching. White women. That's what this is.
Let's see what else. You voted for a guy who said, "Come, risk your lives for the Grand Wizard. Come in the snow and the sleet, because I am more important than your life."
He did say that in what was clearly a joke, but let's pretend that he said it very seriously.
That's who the 5% voted for.
Well, in building off of what Sarah said, by the way, I think our primary system is shot. I think we should have sort of regional primaries that are actually more representative of the country. But last night, 48% of Iowa Republican primary voters, deep red Iowa, voted for someone other than Donald Trump. Now, that doesn't help someone like
40% voted for someone other than Trump. That's their big win here.
Like me, because the ticket is split between a Nikki, a Vivek, who's now out, and a DeSantis. But it does tell me that he is far less popular than he was in 2020. Now, of course.
The cope. She's sitting there thinking like, even I'm not buying it.
He was uncontested in the Iowa caucus in 2020. He won 97%.
Oh, so somehow when he's contested versus non-contested, yeah, he doesn't do as well when he's contested. He only gets the majority in a 5-person race because there were actually 5 candidates.
There's an appetite for something different, but the strategy to overcome him has been flawed. Here's the thing. I think he's incredibly weak in a general election. There was an exit poll or entrance poll from last night. 32% of, again, deep red Iowa primary voters came out and said if he is convicted, they will not vote for him.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And what percent will start voting for him if he is convicted? Because I actually think his numbers will go up if he gets convicted. I think they'll go way up.
That's actually pretty stunning. You cannot win the presidential election without that 30% block. Here's my note to Democrats, though. The number one issue for voters who turned out last night was border security. Democrats have to wake up to the fact, and John Fetterman said this well, caring about border security doesn't mean you're xenophobic, doesn't mean you're anti-immigrant. It means it affects the economy, it affects the health in this country, the fentanyl
Well, it's
crisis.
too bad that Trump didn't finish the wall there.
Yeah,
Oh, it's all his fault that he didn't finish the wall that we tried stopping him from building. that we were screaming that he shouldn't be building because that's xenophobic. It's too bad that all of a sudden that the border crisis has surged by 1,000% since Biden took office. It's too bad.
Say that. The wall was never the solution.
What did he do?
The wall was never the solution. I've said that for years. But we have the most border crossings in history right now, and I feel like Biden is treating it like it's just not an issue that matters, and voters are saying, please fix it.
People out there, I think, need to understand that it's not just him. It's the Republican Party right now. It is in some kind of crazy phase where all they want to
crazy phase. It's those MAGAs. It's those MAGAs. It's those MAGAs.
Do is stick it to the Democrats and hope that, for example, this is what
it's like some crazy phase. They were screaming about obstructionism ever since 2010 under Obama. It's a crazy phase. One of those really long phases. One of those really long phases where we just don't like socialistic policies. I don't know. One of those crazy phases where like these people in the Republican Party actually care about equality versus equity. One of those crazy phases. Political pundit Bette Midler.
I wanted to say here. 15 of the Republican state governors currently opted out.
And yes, I know it's Joy Behar.
Of a
Behar.
food assistance program that is going to leave 8 million needy children hungry. That is what the Republican Party is doing right now. Forget about.
Oh my gosh. But what about the children? What about the children? I understand that we have an invasion across our southern border, but what about the children?
Out the border for a second and concentrate for a minute on these anti-abortion people.
This is a winning strategy. Ignore the border. That's good. It's a good plan. I hope the Democrats listen to Joy. She's full of wonderful ideas. This is how they'll win. Focus on the children. That's how you'll win. Ignore the border. Yeah.
Anti-choice people who don't seem to care that 8 million children will be hungry.
Well, federal.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, I don't even know what 8 million children she's talking about.
That is the hypocrisy and the irony.
Can I come in because I haven't said anything?
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay, so I understand you're putting it into context and only 5% of people showed up, and I understand what you're saying at the population, but Trump won 98 out of 99 Iowa counties that did vote, and out of those, he lost the 99th by just 1 vote. So the notion somehow...
In the most Democrat-leading county, which I actually thought he won 99 out of 99 when all is said and done.
That is just not representative of Iowa, I think is actually a little bit misleading because Iowa...
5% of the population shows up. I don't think that's representative in general.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Iowa nominated Barack Obama. Like, I don't feel like you can...
I think it is a little bit...
Lunatic. I'd nominate Barack Obama. I'd nominate Albert Einstein because I want a really smart guy.
Disingenuous to say that 5% is not reflective of the rest of Iowa. The other thing I wanted to say was
Democrats have
but based on wait, let her finish.
Well, Trump.
It's only the Trump voters that came out. All the non-Trump voters, all the anti-Trump people, they stayed home.
Share was 51%. DeSantis finished a pretty distant second at 21%, and Nikki Haley at 19%. So I think we're all sitting here disgusted that they would vote for someone like this. But I don't think that it is so outrageous that they did, because I mean, we could have figured that out without the caucus.
Yeah, we knew
everyone said this was going to happen.
Now now before it was like it's getting closer, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. Now that the results are in, it's like, yeah, well, we knew this was going to happen. Come on. But wait till New Hampshire. Wait till New Hampshire. They seem to be putting a lot into New Hampshire. So in case you're unaware, the reason they're very excited for New Hampshire, the reason that you might have heard a lot of talk about New Hampshire is because in New Hampshire, they allow independents and Democrats to come in there and vote in a Republican primary. And Nikki Haley is banking on that carrying her towards, hopefully in her mind, a victory in New Hampshire. Just listen to the mindset of a neocon. Yeah, my party doesn't really want me, but I'm going to get a real spur from the people who are never going to vote for me in a general election. Yeah. Go Nikki. Go Nikki. Go Nikki. Go Nikki. It's your birthday. Like, how is that a strategy moving forward?
That's why I'm surprised everybody is surprised. I mean, it's
no big surprise.
You know,
No big surprise.
it's-
We all knew.
Oh,
We all knew, and it's only 5%. And he only won by 30 points, not 97. He didn't get 97. We all knew this was going to happen. No one showed up. It was only 5%, and this is just Iowa. And he didn't get 97%, and it was an embarrassing loss. And lest we forget how they've been gunning for Ron. Everyone's been gunning for Ron. They've been propping up Donald. That's what the media's been doing, propping him up. Those Trump-loving media propping him up all the time.
Okay, because it sounded like everybody was surprised when I listened. I haven't said anything, so now I'm going to say that.
All right. Go ahead.
I do think that it is something that we knew was going to happen. It's not a shock.
Yeah.
You know, I do like the idea that it's 5% because, you know, where did
That's something for me to grip onto.
everybody else go?
They don't participate.
What was
in
that? Well,
caucus.
that's
stayed home.
It's 4 degrees outside. It's not like they're showing up for a job.
Well, that's the thing that you have to keep in mind.
That's historically the number, by the way. 3 to 5% of Iowa participates in caucuses historically.
So that's a proof of something. I don't know how that's relevant at all.
This was also a smaller turnout
Because
than
of the
prior
weather.
because
of the weather, but it's not
Okay.
unusual.
But it's something to keep in mind. Listen, this is like a dusting. This is like when you blow some air with your thing and you see what.
I'm feeling like this is a dusting. I feel like I'm getting a dusting right now. It's like I got. It's just a dusting. What the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about, woman? Oh my gosh, I shouldn't assume you're down there. Sorry, Damon.
Moves around. The note for Democrats is not that. The note for Democrats is you better figure out what you want because it all comes down to the same thing. You either want this America or you want the other America.
This America, the other America. Well, break that down further, Whoopi.
That's what it's about. It's very simple.
That's right.
It's this America where, you know, there's folks are saying, you know, you don't belong. You can't be here. You are not welcome, blah, blah, blah.
What? What? What are you talking about? Who said that? Which America is that? Does she think that between 2017 and 2021 that all of a sudden we reverted back to like the 1840s? What the hell is she talking about? You're not welcome, blah, blah. What are you talking about?
It's either that America or the America where.
Oh, and
when
screw the
people
Constitution. Yeah.
say that, we say that's not true. You can't do that. This is what the Constitution says. That's the America I want. I want to.
Oh, yeah. Democrats are all about the Constitution. That's what they are. They're all about the Constitution. Yeah, that's the America I want. Yeah.
That stuff.
I like that. I like that.
That's
I like
you know,
that
because
America.
it's not.
Yeah.
We're not going to change overnight. We're still always going to look and say, "Well, I don't know if you're supposed to be here." You know.
What are you
because
talking about? Who is she talking about?
That's what human beings do. They always look for someone to blame it on. So just saying that I'm not going to let, say, Brian scapegoat me right now because he wants me to get to the fact that Sonny has a legal note.
Hit it, Sonny.
Trump
Very
has
good transition.
denied all sexual assault allegations.
Well, he's already been found liable, has he
Yes.
not?
Oh, well, there you go. Has he already been found liable? Has he not?
Yes, he has. And in
Okay.
fact, this
Okay.
defamation trial that he's now facing again is because after he was found guilty of sexually assault.
All right, I don't really care about their coverage of this, which I don't know. They're wrapping this up in 10 seconds anyway. So, yeah, there you go. That's their little cope and seed, which I had a great time. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. Let's check out these fine folks here. These fine folks. Socialism is communism. One is by force, one is by vote. It's basically murder versus self-deletion. Results is the same: impoverishment and graves. I told you. say it one more time. Socialism must lead invariably to worldwide impoverishment. That is not a failure of socialism. It is a feature. It is a feature which its advocates, the non-useful idiots. I'm not talking about the morons you'll talk to on X who just don't understand how socialism works. I'm not talking about some stupid Gen Z, millennial, whatever. I can't keep your generation straight anymore. I'm not talking about some 22-year-old college kid who you're talking to. Who just can't see more than 6 minutes down the pike. But I'm talking about like it's the leaders who are advocating for it. They see the impoverishment of society not as a failing of socialism, but as a feature. And then they deny it's going to happen, even though they can see down the road. Whoopi laughing at, let me add color to this, and her changing speech to perspective. She made me laugh with that one. Nikki can make it a two-person race by dropping out. Oh, so I want to mention, so I'm glad you brought this up, Kate C. It's actually a really good thing. I was talking to someone, one of you guys, who was DMing me on X about the fact that it's actually it's really important for Trump that both Nikki and Ron stay in for the same period of time, because they definitely eat into each other more than they eat into him. And if he would have won, let's imagine it had been a two-person race when they went into Iowa. So he would have picked up, and Vivek had dropped out beforehand, and Ron DeSantis had dropped out beforehand, or Nikki had. The final results likely would have been something like 55, 56% for Trump, and like 42, 43% for Haley or DeSantis who stayed in there. That is much less of a dominant win than 51, 20, 27. Much less of a dominant win. So in an ideal world, if you want to see Trump quickly scoot through towards getting the nomination, you want both of them in. If you're a Trump fan, you want both of them in, or for them both to drop out at the same time. That's an ideal thing. Not for this to come down to a two-person race. He'll still win a two-person race. I'm very confident he'll win a two-person race, but it's not going to be the same level of dominance. It's not going to be the same level of dominance once this gets whittled down to a two-person race and one of them waves the white flag, which I think is probably going to be DeSantis before Nikki Haley. DeSantis has all the whining, crying of a guy who has one foot out the door in their campaign. That's the sound of that. That is the wailing of someone who feels as if he just got butt slapped. Much more than Nikki Haley is, who's crowing as if she had some sort of victory by finishing third. And I think that's because he put supposedly a lot more money into Iowa than any others. Supposedly, when you break down the numbers, he spent like $4,000 for every vote he got. I'm not going to have time to get through to the that podcast I referenced, which is a leftist podcast. But they were making an interesting point when they were talking about the fact that that they quoted someone. It wasn't their own original thought, but they quoted someone who made an interesting point when they were talking about how Ron DeSantis went to 99 counties. 99 counties. He lost all of them. He went to 99 counties. Trump didn't do that. He went to one or two. And the people from 99 counties came to him. That's the difference. That's the difference between Ron DeSantis and Trump. DeSantis is going through the old school political method of, I'm going to go knocking door to door and say, hey, can you vote for me? Can you put a sign up that says Ron DeSantis on your front lawn? That's not what works anymore. That's not the type of politics that work anymore. That's a very old school. And I'm not saying you don't need some grassroots motivation. You do. That grassroots is an important thing. On the ground is important, but not the political leader themselves. That's not how you win. You don't win by having the leader themselves knocking door to door. You need to have strong grassroots efforts of people who are going to do that for you, an army of people who are happy to do that for you. You need to inspire that army not you yourself going door to door. Him going to making 99 stops in Iowa. That's not and not managing to win a single one. Not a single one. The difference is he has to go to the 99 counties. Trump shows up in one county and the 99 counties come to him. That's the difference. John Fetterman said this well. My guys don't. The selective memory drives me nuts. Repeal 19A. I think the world would be a better place if we did. I think it would be. All right. I'll do this one and get on out of here. Let's have them break down. Let's have this guy who loves not wearing a jacket. He's the Jim Jordan of election analysis. I never knew his name. And my goal is to go through life without ever knowing his name. But every 4 years, I see this guy. So when he's talking about, the path to 270, gets very excited, gets very into it. Please don't. I'm not even going to look at the chat for the next 10 minutes because I'm afraid someone's going to mention his name. One of you is going to just be like in all caps and tagging me, telling me his name. And my goal is to spend the rest of my life never knowing no jacket guy's name. And I'll see him and my relationship with him will be, I'll see him every 4 years in front of his stupid green screen where he's going to sit here waving his arms like he's some weatherman saying there's a cold front that's moving across here. You can see the demographics. It's coming on up. There's a red line that's reflecting how things have progressed over the last several months. And you can see the numbers tracking. Waving his arms in broad strokes in front of his stupid green screen. And I never want to know his name. That's my goal. Never. That's how I want to go through life. He got VP chance. I think he can do better than VP. There are other roles I'd like to see him in. I love him. I love to see. You know what I want to see him? I want to see him chief of staff. Chief of staff. I think Ted Cruz would be a better VP. DNC attempted to make competition synonymous with criminal to pervasively slander Trump so society rejects his campaign. It didn't work. Yeah.
We want to turn to Kristen Welker, moderator. Meet the press.
Whoops. Sorry. I had it on chipmunk mode.
And Steve Kornacki, our national political correspondent. We love the duo so much. Yesterday, we're back for more. Okay, not a lot of suspense at the top of the ticket. Show us how big a blowout this was, though. For the
not a lot of suspense, meaning we all knew this was going to happen. We've been telling you about how the polls have gotten closer and closer and getting closer, and there's a pathway in here that you can figure out. We've been saying that, but there was not a lot of suspense. We all knew all along.
President.
Yeah, a couple ways to look at it, Savannah. I mean, first of all, the 51% that Donald Trump ends up with, that is a record in the Iowa caucuses. The previous best was 41%. And the margin here, it's basically 30 points, Trump to DeSantis. The previous best was 12 points. So he substantially improved on what we've seen historically. Look, Trump improved, obviously, across the board. The biggest improvement, evangelical voters. He lost them double digits in 2016.
One of the things I love about him is that I think he tends to wear sneakers a lot, as if, he's really digging in the trenches.
He swamped DeSantis and Haley among them. The one interesting nugget here, I think, look, 99 counties in Iowa. You see that Trump red all over this. There's one county that Trump didn't win. And I want to show you how close Trump came to go in 99 for 99. Check this out. One vote. Wow. One vote in Johnson County. And if it had flipped, Donald Trump would have won there and he would have gone 99 for 99.
Oh, maybe it's not a green screen. Maybe it's a giant iPad. Maybe that's what they got going on there. It seemed like he was touching a button and that's what, either that or he's got good timing with his producer.
99.
You know, what's so fascinating about this is if you look a long, long time ago, 1 year, Trump had a lot more seeming political vulnerability. It looked like some Republicans were looking for an alternative. What a difference a year makes.
They definitely were, and it's easy to forget this. But
he always crouches down also. He bends his knees like he's ready to start going into his whole kickboxing thing there. I do enjoy the guy.
Call this up. This is a line graph of the support for the candidates going back to the start of 2023. And you remember at the start of 23, Republicans had that bad midterm. The Trump-aligned candidates cost them key races. You had Ron DeSantis in some cases within 10 points of Trump nationally. That's why all these candidates emerged. They thought Republicans were moving on. Here's where it diverged. Trump's line went up. DeSantis's went down. Do you know what happened that week? That week, first week of March 2023, Trump was indicted for the first time in New York on the Stormy Daniels matter. It clearly brought a rally around Trump effect to Republicans.
And it brought a crash to DeSantis because he handled it like an idiot. The way he handled it, he was stupid. That's what happened. He handled it like a moron, DeSantis. Instead of like trouncing them and denouncing them the way Vivek did, DeSantis could have offset that push by Trump if he would have taken Trump's side. But instead, he did the cuck version. He gave you the cuck response of basically saying, like, I'm not going to let, like, at first with Mar-a-Lago, he's like, I'm not going to, he waited 2 days before saying, I don't know if I'm going to let them take him and let a marshal arrest him. He was so lukewarm. And with every indictment, he got cooler and cooler towards standing by Trump. So, yeah, that's why you saw this little crash from like 40% to 20%.
More indictments and the trajectory goes up, and maybe that's why we see him in courtrooms as much as the campaign trail. It's working for him. Kristen.
And the proof that I'm correct, as far as that, as you can see, I mean, first, Nikki Haley started surging and catching up to him. I mean, look at the margin there, the margin of difference between him and Nikki back in January. And, so he's coming down, but, Nikki kept going up. He didn't have to crash the way that he did. It's just that he showed his true colors once those indictments were dropped.
And let's talk about this race. Let's talk about DeSantis and Haley. Both are saying they got tickets out of Iowa. Haley is saying it's a two-person race now. I think DeSantis might disagree. What is their path, if there is one at all?
We're talking about very narrow paths here, if at all. For Nikki Haley.
I hate this woman, by the way. I hate this clown with her stupid touch-up makeup. Oh gosh, she makes me crazy eyes. All right, talk to us, Kristen.
It was going to go through New Hampshire. You're absolutely right. That second, third place finish, tight as a tick, Savannah. But Nikki Haley's trying to say, look, this is a victory. But she's been deprived of that momentum that she was looking for. Even when she gets to New Hampshire, who are her supporters there? Moderates, independents. That's not necessarily a winning coalition to win the nomination, because as Steve just laid out, look at who put Trump in the winner's slot in Iowa. In terms of Ron DeSantis, yes, he's stopping in South Carolina, but Savannah, it's not clear that he can win South Carolina or New Hampshire, because guess who has the lead there? Donald Trump. Yes.
No, they're not winning anything. It's possible Nikki will ride enough that enough Democrats will pop in there and vote for Nikki to give her a win. And if that does happen, they're going to spend the next month until Super Tuesday saying, "See, she's in the lead. She's in the lead." Look, that's what the goal is going to be. That's the objective for New Hampshire, which is next week. That's the objective. By the way, Trugi Show said, "I'm a little annoyed with some MAGA, not you, asking me to idolize this guy from Argentina, but insisting I can trust Vivek. My evangelical parents will never embrace Vivek for religious reasons, sadly." That is sad. Breck Nichols saying, "Joe, the man is Milton Friedman with sideburns." Awesome. And Augen Heck says, "If he ever meets Trump, I bet they become best friends." Yeah, no, yeah. I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would. Let me check over here in case I missed anything. We're good over here. I think that Nikki's going to stay in this race longer than Ron.
Yes, Nikki Haley's within striking distance of Trump.
Like I said, he's in the death throes. Even some of his biggest supporters are like, "Well, I'm not voting for Trump unless he's a VP, unless DeSantis is his VP." That's the cry of someone who's like, "Yeah, we lost."
Trump in New Hampshire, her very narrow path just got narrower, and it's still not clear where Ron DeSantis goes from here.
The map doesn't get better for either one of them as the primaries go forward. Let's talk about Trump and his messaging last night, because he was quite magnanimous. Seemed to be wanting to say, "Kumbaya, it's time to put down our swords and get together and rally around. This thing's done."
That may have been the one word he didn't use, kumbaya, because he was basically praising his rivals When was the last time we heard that? He dropped his nicknames for them. He said it's time for this country to come together. His tone may have been the other big headline that came out of that big Trump win last night. So here's what to watch for. Watch for Republicans to start to consolidate more around him. We saw that in the days leading up to Iowa. Doug Burgum, for example.
I really hope, by the way, that he embraces that tone a lot more. He needs to use that tone for the next year. The rest of the year, he needs to take that tone, that rallying everyone together tone. It's time for him to stop with the whole bitching and moaning. It's really time. And I know that he's facing all these indictments. I know that he's being challenged in certain ways that no person's ever been challenged. But if you want to ascend back to the throne, you need to step up in that alpha way where it's like, I'm going to withstand everything. No matter what they throw at me, I'm going to withstand it. I'm going to beat it. And I'm going to bring this country together for all Americans and make sure that all Americans, and that has to be the messaging that's coming out of Camp Trump. That's what I really want to see. And if he struggles in New Hampshire, I don't want to hear whining about the fact that there was a whole bunch of Democrats who voted for Nikki Haley. I don't want to hear about it. Just be like, all right, that's New Hampshire. That's New Hampshire. You can throw out and say, she's able to get support there. He did throw that out in one of his campaign things. And I know he's going to say that a lack of him trouncing Nikki in New Hampshire is because of the Democrats. I know that. I'm simply saying, I don't want to be hearing that messaging. I don't want to hear negativity about others. I really just want him to be giving positive messaging, positive messaging, positive messaging. That's what I would love to see from him. That's what the country is looking for. That's the key shortcoming that people are citing about him, that his negativity toward others is alienating. And I hope he's enough of a whiz about PR that he understands how to sell it. I just really hope that he recognizes it, doesn't let his insecurities dominate him, that he feels a need to start trashing other people, because I don't think it's going to play well.
Marco Rubio have endorsed him. Expect to see a whole lot more of that, obviously, Vivek Ramaswamy as well. And then, as we've been saying, he's going to be back in court today because he thinks that is an effective way at campaigning, at rallying Republican voters around him.
All right, Kristen and Steve, thank you. Grab it now.
If he were to go with positivity instead of trying to bash for the next 11 months while facing these persecutions, and go with positivity, say, I'm going to whatever legal things they try throwing at me, I'll withstand all of that. But I'm here to bring America together. I'm telling you, he'd win 30 to 35 states. It wouldn't be close. That's all he needs to do. Just bring positivity.
Nap.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today.
All right, shut up. I'm done with you. I had enough of you. All right. I think that is our show. I think we covered it. I just meant to tell you that goodlogic.locals.com. Goodlogic.locals.com. That's where you find me. Tomorrow, I'm torn. I'm torn between two things that I want to cover. One is a Trump thing I'm going to be doing locals. I'm going to be doing a local show. I know I promised one today. I apologize I didn't get to it today. I am sorry about that. I do plan on doing a local show tomorrow. I'm torn because on one hand, there's like a 2.5 hour video that one of my producers shared with me covering a Trump motion to dismiss the Georgia indictment. But that's a really long one. It's a really long video. But it is a hearing where there's oral arguments that are made, which honestly, if I knew about it, I probably would have streamed. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Maybe I'll stream it tomorrow. Maybe I'll stream that to YouTube. That's too long. But I definitely want to do something on locals. There was another thing which I was looking at, this video breaking down different types of Jews. That's more of a locals type of thing. I don't know. But I'm definitely planning on doing some on locals. So you'll find that at goodlogic.locals.com, goodlogic.locals.com. Matthew Felty, final word of the night goes to you, my brother. I like Vivek for chief of staff as well. Vivek on the campaign trail can be a brash, straight talker like Scaramucci was, and him be magnanimous. Yeah. But the chief of staff is helping implement policy. And I think that he brings enough to the table as to innovative, creative policies. One of the things I loved about Vivek that made him radically different from any other politician was that he actually analyzed the powers of the office and said, these are the policies I want to effectuate. These are the fixes I want to make. I have to assume that Congress is going to hate me and disagree with everything I want. What do I have based on the powers given to me by the Constitution that I can implement no matter how much Congress tries to obstruct me? He used that as his baseline, as a way of coming up with policies for a president to implement genuine change in this country, which can really lead to dramatic improvement for the way we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. That is an innovative perspective. That is such a healthy way of looking at how to solve the problem, which he could theoretically help Trump implement as a chief of staff, a top guru for him. And it seems like Trump is taking many of his ideas and embracing them for his policies. So that I think there's a natural marriage there. I also think that Trump might feel a little bit intimidated by having Vivek in the spotlight. And if Vivek is chief of staff, he's not in the spotlight. But he's very, very, very influential. I think that could be really good. It could be really good. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. You asked me my VP. Right now, if I had to come up with a VP, like a top VP, first of all, if Nikki Haley, I want to say this, this talk about him choosing Nikki Haley as his vice president, and if he does that, I am going to have to think long and hard about supporting him, because I would be terrified that this guy is not going to make it through his 4 years, and we'll see a President Haley being sworn in, and that would freak the hell out of me. I would be terrified about a President Haley. I would think long and hard. Like, do I really trust that she's not going to work some way to, like, basically figure out a way into office? That's terrifying. I will be so much less enthusiastic in my support if, God forbid, he makes that choice. And he makes some terrible personnel choices sometimes. You ask me who I want right now, who I think is a good fit, that's not going to steal too much limelight for him, will be reliably supportive. And I mentioned this to that guy I was talking to in DM. He actually mentioned it, and I was like, I think that's a really good choice. It's Ted Cruz. I think Ted Cruz is not a bad choice at all. Not a bad choice at all. Anyhow, he's been very reliably supportive of Trump throughout all the problems. He's been very reliable, and I think that it would be a great way of helping solidify Texas, that people will be speculating he has to worry about. I think Ted Cruz is a really good choice. And I know people talk about Ben Carson, and I get it. He's black. I understand all that. He has roughly 12% of the charisma of Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis is literally made out of cardboard. So it's just astonishing. Look, he's never said anything that has bothered me, Ben Carson, but that could be because 9 seconds after he starts talking, I literally zone out and fall asleep. I can't remember him saying anything ever. And he might have said some brilliant stuff, but there are dandelions that hold far more fascinating appeal than Ben Carson. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Imagine a debate between Kamala and Ted Cruz versus Kamala versus Ben Carson. I mean, we have to stop thinking that because he's black, also that's going to be very significant. That's a very old school way of looking at politics, because when you're looking at politics that way, you're just ignoring the fact that, really, you know what, Clarence Thomas is the second black Supreme Court justice. And it's not like they treat him with any sort of kid gloves. They'll just label him with the same ugly terms that they attach to Clarence Thomas. So it's not going to be helping you at all win the black vote having some black VP. Not going to do anything for Trump. No, she's a neocon. I'm not a fan of her at all. I mean, she's okay. A lot of people talk about it, and they like the fact that, she's got like a uterus as adding some sort of appeal. I'll tell you, like, I like Mike Johnson a lot more than I like that I like Elise Stefanik a lot more. Okay. Now can I wrap up? Is it okay if I start wrapping this thing up? Just gotta take care of one thing here before I do. One thing, one more redirect. Take care of my redirect. All right. Come on. No. Really? He's not streaming? He's not streaming? Is that really true? He's not going to take Carrie Lake, because she's never won anything. So, yeah, Carrie Lake is a firebrand. And she could be like electrifying. But I don't think he's looking for someone necessarily who's electrifying. I don't think he wants someone who's going to steal a spotlight. And she hasn't been proven to be a winner. So I think he holds that against her. MG Law? Who's MG Law? And Kirsty Noem, I don't know. She feels like a flip-flopper to me. I know Nick, he streamed this afternoon, so he's not going out? Oh, is that what he is? He's painting the trees blue? That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, please. I would love that. But that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. There's no stream tonight. All right, so I feel less guilty about running a little long. I feel less guilty about that. Not really about the whole Tulsi Gabbard. Although I like Tulsi Gabbard 1,000 times more than I like Nikki Haley. And RFK will take away your guns. So there's that problem with that. I'm getting a lot of pressure to stay. One of my ex-followers saying Vivek, and I mentioned I think Vivek would be better as chief of staff. He'll be more influential, and he's not going to steal any spotlight, so that'll make Trump happy. And I think that he can actually help implement policies and give Trump guidance. I would love to have someone pushing America First ideals who's sitting as his right-hand man. Hey, Ron Paul. Rand Paul. I must stay. It's not like, it's not like I'm charging you guys an hourly here. Like, there's no must stay, I don't get paid. There's no time and a half. I get when I'm like, when I stay. What Babylon Bee article? What Babylon Bee article? Yeah, it is plenty of reward. It's plenty of reward. And yet, by the way, someone mentioned Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin, yeah, he's dead, Jim. Mentioned Sarah Palin. That should teach you a lesson. Sarah Palin should teach you a lesson that just finding someone based on their intersectionality and think that that's going to give you a boost ain't true. So those of you who think that Ben Carson has some sort of added plus, I don't know what the heck he brings. I don't know what he brings. If you have to get a black face in there, so make it Larry Elder, for crying out loud. What makes him any worse than Ben Carson? That's what I should have. I should have a show. I should have a late night show where I call that Tunnel Talk. And tonight on Tunnel Talk, sometimes you gotta lean into it. Tonight on Tunnel Talk. That sounds so wrong. Because, a baggage named Corey Lewandowski. Yeah, I remember her having baggage. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Laura Loomer. I think she has designs on some sort of like cabinet appointment or something like that. But that's why she's like, she comes across to me like she's frothing. I like look at her and like I two words flash into my mind whenever I hear her talking. From hunger. That's it. Laura Loomer, from hunger. That's it. It's just there's something wrong there. I don't know. I didn't even recognize this is a guy I know. How you doing, Shia? Good to see you. Please stay. I don't even have. There was one. I'll tell you this much. You guys are asking really nicely. But that's not going to get him a. Do you think Sarah Palin got McCain a suburban women vote? It's not like people are sufficiently wise today to see through that. Yeah, sure, if it's the top of the ticket, but not as like some sort of right-hand man or woman, whatever. No one cares that Kamala was a woman, other than like I don't think it got any votes. She's like the political paparazzi. Maybe, yeah, Laura Loomer. Maybe. There was one thing I wanted to share with you guys. Just thought this might lead me into a rant, and I wanted to save a rant for like, I don't know, different night.
And I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms. That's a different argument. Okay, but you may.
I can make a career out of following Jon Stewart and debunking this schmuck. He's a clever schmuck, and he requires debunking. So here we go. This ends up in my YouTube. His shorts end up in my YouTube feed all the time, and I don't know if it's because I save them away for like a rainy day that I can watch with you guys, but
And I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms. That's a different argument. Okay, but you may do. Here's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. You want to say I'm a Second Amendment purist and I'm making it safer. You're not. You're making it more chaotic. And that's not a matter of opinion.
No, it is a matter of opinion.
That is a matter of opinion.
No, it's 100% a matter of opinion. He's using this guy as his foil to make his point. This is what makes me so aggravated about Jon Stewart. He basically takes someone who's intellectually limited, tries to figure out a way to cleverly paint them into a corner, and then feels like, aha, you see, I won. Even as he makes empty arguments. This guy doesn't see where he's being led down by the nose down a path into giving Jon Stewart what he wants. And when he sees it like a moment before the bus hits. He sees it, but sort of pulls up, but far too late, and doesn't realize the flaw in what Jon Stewart's saying.
But why take away their tools? Because certain of their tools that they're using would be infringements upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, upon their constitutional rights, upon due process, upon other things. That registering is an infringement? Yes.
That's true. It is. You have to be prepared for where he's going to go with. You have to be prepared for the argument that he's going to go to is so obvious, especially when he says the next sentence.
Okay. Is voting a right?
Boom. Right there, you should know, why is he bringing up voting now? Why would he be bringing up? Oh, because you register to vote. So that's where he's going to go. That's where you need to be. That's where your brain, if you're sitting here and you're analyzing, I'm sitting in an interview with a guy who I know is hostile and is going to be trying to gotcha me. That his whole goal is to gotcha me. So you need to be asking yourself, why is he asking me that question? What does voting have in common with gun ownership and his perspective about what healthy gun ownership is? Oh, registration. That should be hitting you, boom, right away. And sitting there saying, well, why is it different? Because it is different. But you should be processing in your brain. But this guy's a little too slow. I'm not even sure who this guy is, but it's Oklahoma State Senator Nathan Dahm. All right, I should read more.
It's a right for citizens, yes. Do you have to do anything to do it? Yes. What do you have to do? It depends on the state. What do you have to do?
See, now I think he's starting to recognize the problem he's having, can't figure out the answer to what registration actually means. But instead, he's just getting scared of the word register. He's getting very scared of that word. So he dances in a way that makes him look like he's intentionally dancing to try and avoid the truth. You're scared of the truth, so you're dancing around. No, it's a false framing.
You have to be at least 18 years old. What do you have to do? And in some places, you have to have a government-issued ID. What do you have to? You have to be on the voter rolls? Register. You have to register. So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement? And I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms. That's a different argument. Okay, well, you may do. Here's what I'm saying. You want to say I'm a Second Amendment purist and I'm making it safer. You're not. You're making it more chaotic. And that.
So yeah, so your fixation there. Sorry, I didn't realize it would start all over again. Is that so? If you have to register to vote, and that's not an infringement, so registering a gun should not be deemed an infringement either. Here's the problem with that. See, when you're registering to vote, that doesn't mean that you're obligated to tell the government who you're voting for, which is what the way gun registrations work, is that basically you tell them every gun that you have. It's not like you have to register you're a gun owner. That's not it. They want to know every gun that you own, which is like basically saying, I need to register. That's what they're saying with registering your gun. That you have to register every gun that you own. That's what they're saying. That's not the same thing as registering to vote. That would be the same thing as registering to vote for this candidate X. That, hey, government, this is the person I'm voting for. Would you think that's an infringement, Johnny? Would you think that's an infringement? If you have to register to vote for candidate X in this election, would you think that that's maybe an infringement? That's what the gun registration laws are. That's why it's an infringement. If it was just a matter of saying, hey, I'm a gun owner, I own guns, and I might own one, I might own an armory, and you don't know what guns I own, that would be more akin. That would be more akin. But that's not the way gun registration laws ever work. No, you have to say, this is the gun that I'm buying. Here's the serial number. Yeah. So it's a false framing. But what does he do? He locks in on that word register as if just the word register always means the same thing, irrespective of context. And that once I could show, aha, it's not infringement over here. So that means it's no matter how I make you register in any other capacity, that cannot be deemed an infringement either. What a ridiculous way of framing it. It's ridiculous. Black women love the Kamala? I don't know about that. I don't know many black women. Maybe they do. I don't know. Could you recommend a lawyer's site? Want to see if you tell me this? How many women voted for Allegan? How many women voted for McCain because Sarah Palin was on the tickets? How many women voted for Ferragamo? Whatever her name was. Could you recommend a lawyer's site? Want to see if I have a case against my local government in Vermont? Else you want to make the money? LOL. I definitely don't want to make the money in Vermont. No, I don't know anything about Vermont law. I think Vermont is a state, I'm fairly certain. B Video Law and Order Microaggression Victims Unit. And I know it's not a right. I know. Don't get all constitutionalists on me. Don't do that. Don't do that. When you're sitting in an interview like that, you can make the point that there's nothing that says that your voting rights shall not be infringed. But if you're sitting there as a Republican and you say there's nothing wrong with infringing people's rights, you are falling into the trap. You are falling into that trap. So you have to know when you're technically right and winning the argument while losing the war. Because this whole thing is about, and this is why, yeah, I'm sitting here, I'm having a conversation with you as far as like philosophically, is voting the same thing as your Second Amendment rights, and make it very evident to you that obviously your Second Amendment rights are far more significant than your right to vote. It's not even close. It's not even close. Look back historically at Second Amendment, women didn't have any right to vote at all, and they had a right to own a gun. Part of their basic civil liberties. So, yeah, obviously it's not the same level right. But if you say that in an interview with the likes of Jon Stewart, you are in a video that's going to go viral. As you see, Republicans want to restrict your right to vote. They're totally fine with taking away your right to vote. In ways that you can never take away their guns, they're happy to take away your right to vote. So yeah, you would be technically accurate. And the way we portrayed in the minds of the useful idiots is that, yeah, Republicans want to steal our right to vote and leave it only for old white men to vote. That's how it plays. You have to understand how things are going to play in the public arena and how it's easily framed in a way that's going to spin you in a way that's going to look very negative. That's part of being a successful politician, is understanding how things will read. So everything you're saying is technically accurate. And it's also, it's self-immolation to give this argument in that setting. So 100% accurate, and just a poor way to frame it because of the way it will blow up in your face. All right. If you want me to cover something, tell me what you want me to cover. Otherwise, I got to wrap up here. Otherwise, I got no choice. I already scared away 200 people because they all thought I was leaving. And they're like, oh, I'm going to beat him to the exit. So I specifically said that. I specifically said this, Allegan. I said, yes, you're 100% accurate, and that ignores how that will play in the public arena. If you're looking to get votes in an area where you have a mix of Democrats and Republicans, you have to understand how poorly that will play to the your Democratic constituents. Don't get me started on the 3/5 compromise. Don't get me started on this. Okay? No. It's been like 2 years since I went bananas over the lies about the 3/5 compromise. The outright lies about the 3/5 compromise. And then completely false framing about the 3/5 compromise. Don't even get me started. Chevron. I'm not going to Chevron. I have to look at Chevron arguments before I can get into it. See, this is an interesting thought. Get some man candy. That's a great idea. How do you get white women? Get some man candy. That's a really interesting idea. Get some Mimbo up there. Locals? You want me to check locals? I'll check locals for you. What do you want from me? What are you saying? I got to these locals is driving me cuckoo also. It's not refreshing for me. That's the problem. All right. No, I don't want in my chat here. Yeah, see, that was the problem I was having, is locals wasn't sending me. All right. Now it says NV just started doing caucus this election. NV? You mean Nevada? First time, so we have both primary and caucus, but you can only participate in one. Absolutely no info has been sent out to voters about this. I had to do some deep diving on where to go, and I'm worried about Trump in Nevada because of it. I think he'll be fine. Sorry if this repeat. Locals isn't working well tonight. I know. You need to send me a repeat. Well, yeah, I didn't even know anything about this, Viola. You're dropping, what you're dropping on me is completely new information. I was completely unaware of it. But Yeah. All right. Let me see if there was anything in locals. Let me see if there's anything in locals that you guys want me to cover. That's pretty funny. I'm not seeing. Not covering that. Entry required. I looked at this. I don't remember what it was though. What was this?
What's up, y'all? Gerald.
No, not that. I don't look at doing that. All right. I don't want to start breaking into something that I haven't really heard of or thought about ever before. I like preparing for a show. That's not bad. That's not bad. That'd be hilarious. That'd be totally hilarious. So, Chris, I'd like you to be my vice president. Sit there going to the debates. That'd be hilarious. That'd be totally hilarious. This is what I was thinking about. There's no way I'm doing this now. What the hell is that? What's this? Stream 4 hours ago. Okay.
Speech.
Okay. This is not the actual. I don't know why it is I found this here, but this is a 6-hour stream, which I'm obviously not doing now. But roughly, I'm like 15, 20 minutes into this debate about oral arguments, which is go for like 2.5 hours, which are basically arguing about whether or not Trump can be charged under Georgia's RICO statutes. So I'll just break this down for you in sum and substance as to what Trump's lawyers are basically saying versus what the state is claiming. So I need to pull up for you this statute here. I'll go back a little bit. Nope. I think this might be the right point, but I'm not sure. It also sounded very loud.
Every count that's talked about in this case was published in real time. Every single thing was very...
This is no... Okay, I need to find the right video. Give me another second here. That's not the right one. This is the right one.
We allege...
This is 2.5 hour. Maybe I'll do like 15, 20 minutes of this. I do like cash for AG. That's not bad.
Give that a shot.
And again, I know that this argument has already been raised before Your Honor at the October hearing. And in reading the October hearing, one of the things that kind of came to mind is, and I know that this seems like it's fairly obvious, but the scope of RICO does not apply to the allegations in the indictment. And I want to start off with something that I think is fair.
It's 1614-2. And I'm going to give you a sum and substance as to what it is that his argument is about to be. Because I made it like 25 minutes into this video. So I have a nutshell as to what his argument is. I didn't go through the whole back and forth on it. But he was charged with RICO statute, violation of RICO statute 1614-2. And I'm doing that. What he claims is, it's basically a two-part claim, which is that the preamble to the statute under Georgian law has to be read as being part of the statute. And he's going to fixate on a portion of the preamble as a basis for saying that these charges must be dismissed as against Trump. And this is what he's going to fixate on. It says, it's the intent of the General Assembly, however, that this chapter applied to an interrelated pattern of criminal activity motivated by, or the effect of which, why are you doing it? What's RICO supposed to stop? It's supposed to stop people who are motivated by an interest, which is a pecuniary gain or economic or physical threat or injury. You have to be, this has to be about you chasing money. If we're going to charge you, it has to be a charge that you're looking to get money. If you go through the entire indictment, they never claim that his motivation was money. They say it was to retain his office of presidency. But that's what this whole scheme is about. And what the Georgia statute specifically says is that the statute is geared to be applied to an interrelated pattern of criminal activity that is designed to provide you with a pecuniary gain or to cause someone else an economic or physical threat or injury. And that's not what this is about at all. Obviously, this is about his election interference issues, purportedly, and that they don't even mention anything about Trump going after money. And since this must be read as being part of the statute, he cannot ever lose. They can never establish this. That's what his point is going to be.
Fairly fundamental, but I think it kind of got lost at the last hearing. And that is that 1614-2 is a law. It is the law of this state. It was passed by both houses of the General Assembly. It was signed into law by the governor, and it is the law of this state. It is not a resolution. It is not a guideline. It is not a suggestion. It is something that the state has to deal with. And in particular, what the state has to deal with is the fact that 1614-2 scope limitation that is contained in subparagraph B cannot be ignored. Justice Peterson in the Harrison versus McAfee case explicitly said that unlike captions, codified preambles are part of the act and are appropriate to be read in pari materia with the rest of the act. And I cite numerous cases on this slide where the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court have repeatedly said that when you enact something in a preamble or in a statement of intent, that has to be given meaning, and it has to be read with the rest of the statute. The courts have also said, and these are just cases from 2021 to 2023, and I think there's about 25 of them from the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. They say that they will not read out of a statute language that the General Assembly has decided to put in there. They are not going to ignore language that the General Assembly has put in there as mere surplusage. So there is going to have to be, the preambles mean something. It is the law, and we are going to have to deal with the language that is in there. Well, when we look at the law and we look at what's in 1614.2, and I'm going to go through several canons of construction. The first canon of construction is that we start with the plain language of the statute. And when the plain language of the statute presents an answer to the question, we can stop there. Here, what does the plain language of 1614.2b say? It says that it is not the intent of the General Assembly that isolated incidents of misdemeanor conduct or acts of civil disobedience be prosecuted under the chapter. Very, very clear. It is the intent of the General Assembly, however, that the chapter shall apply to an interrelated pattern of criminal activity motivated by or the effect of which is pecuniary gain or economic or physical threat or injury, period. At the October hearing, the state didn't deal with and explain what the words pecuniary gain, economic or physical threat or injury mean, and how those are imported to the rest of the statute. It did not deal with the plain language of the statute that it doesn't apply to acts of civil disobedience, and it has to. We have to deal with that language. And here, the General Assembly has expressly said that it is not going to apply, RICO Act doesn't apply at all to acts of civil disobedience. And we have, in our prior briefing with regard to the First Amendment,
and all the stuff you're saying he did when he's complaining about election fraud,
every single thing that
civil
the state
disobedience
is saying was done wrong.
If anything,
are all statements, political statements that are made around the 2022 presidential election and the vote counting thereof. All of those fall within the category of civil disobedience if that is read appropriately. More importantly,
where do you find the definition of civil disobedience? It's not in the RICO statute itself, right?
No, it's not in the RICO statute. I think that it's.
So how should we define that?
I think it should be defined as a political statement that is in opposition to some stated position of the government. And here you have a stated position of the government that, Joe Biden won the election, that the vote counting was correct, all of those things. And the people that are indicted here, and the state expressly says it in their introduction, we are going after them because they disagree. That's what they say. And so I think that civil disobedience can be read for that purpose. Moreover, when you look at what does the statute apply to, the statute only applies to economic, fiscal, or bodily harm. That's what it says. It's
so what do we do with the last sentence? That's the one.
What's the last sentence?
Liberally construed, and the focus is on the operative provisions.
I was going to get to that, but I'll get to it right now.
I think
when it says liberally construed.
All right, this is an easy one.
When it says liberally construed, it means you're supposed to try and read these statutes liberally and give them broad applications. So why are you saying it should be limited and not apply to this scenario?
1 second.
He has a good answer for that.
Hold on 1 second. I apologize. I get to my right slide.
The answer he's going to provide is that that's not about the criminal aspect of this RICO charge. That is about the civil aspect, civil damages.
The state, I kind of feel like it's the Princess Bride, where I don't think that the words that they're using mean what they think they mean. Penal statutes in Georgia, and RICO is in part a penal statute, are always strictly construed against the state. That is the rule at common law, and it is the rule in case law right now. It is strictly construed against the state and liberally applied against the accused. And I've got a couple case sites there. Now, your question, Judge, OCGA 1614.2b says, this chapter shall be liberally construed to affect the remedial purposes embodied in its operative provision. Okay. There are two components of the Georgia RICO Act. There is a criminal component to it, and there is a civil component to it. What does remedial purposes aim at? Remedial purposes, and I took remedies in college and law school, is aimed at a civil aspect of the case. And Georgia courts applying this statute have said that the remedial purposes of the Georgia RICO Act, and this is in the case that I have cited here, the tabletop case, is to provide compensation to private persons injured or aggrieved by reason of any RICO violation. The remedial purposes of the statute apply to the civil part of the statute.
So that's where you have liberal construction. That's where you can have broad application and perhaps incorporate civil disobedience. Perhaps, even though that sounds like it's completely the opposite of what says 2 sentences earlier. But that would not apply in criminal. And these are obviously criminal charges.
It is also well established in Georgia law since at least, 1921, that the remedial purposes of a statute relate only to civil remedies, and that the liberal construction direction in 1614(2)b applies only to the civil remedies. So as to the civil components, the purpose being to compensate persons harmed under RICO, liberally apply. When it is a criminal, as it is here, sanction, penal sanctions, you go to strictly construed. That's what the case law says. And in fact, in the case that we have cited here, the Shearman case, it says the same statute, and that's my bracket, like RICO, may partake of each of these separate elements to such an extent as will render it penal in one part and remedial in the other. And I didn't,
I would love Josh Hawley.
Already
I'm a big fan of
a
Josh
lot of
Hawley.
words. It's fairly.
I've already
busy.
gotten you off track, but let me keep doing that. Just to
Yeah.
keep you on your toes here. So have you ever seen a case applying RICO where they've made this distinction between civil and criminal?
It's right here, tabletop. And the other thing that I will say is, and that's the plain reading. And I don't go into all of the other cases. There are cases.
I saw this and I thought to
2023, I
myself,
think I just cited.
I thought to myself, this is what happens when Fannie Willis hires Nathan Wade, who's got zero experience in RICO cases. He didn't think about this whole thing, that he needed to bring up the pecuniary damages or the pecuniary element, and the fact that he had economic gain by staying president. And I know someone mentioned that he didn't take a salary while he was sitting as president, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't have taken one later on. And maybe that's why he's doing it. He could have changed his mind on that. So I think they could make a claim that there is an economic advantage. That's just why he's doing it.
One in here that talk about the application and the definitions of remedial and penal. There are two different things. Remedial is civil, penal is criminal. And if we dig into it, and if Your Honor wants a very long brief with a ton of case citations, I can do it. But that is what it means. And the other thing that I will say is, even if remedial purposes were to apply here, remedial purposes don't mean that you ignore the plain language of the statute.
Which is 2 sentences earlier.
It doesn't mean that just because if you had a remedial purpose, even for the purposes of civil liability, that you would go beyond the plain language of the statute, which says that this applies to financial harm, economic harm, or physical injury. And I think physical can either be bodily injury or injury to property, probably.
So I think he's making a really good argument here. I was like, listening to this, I was like, this is a pretty strong argument. This is a pretty strong argument that the charge. Now, what would happen is likely, almost certainly, what you would anticipate happening is they would impanel a brand new grand jury and include in the indictment charges that he was seeking an economic advantage, and that was his motivation. They would just reframe it that way. But that would start everything all over again, and then, this thing wouldn't be addressed until well after the election of 2024, which I think is a large part of the motivation of Trump. So that's what I think, because this wouldn't make it go away forever. It would just mean that this indictment was a fail, and you have to get a brand new indictment, which they almost certainly would get. And they just tweak it by including that he was seeking economic advantage. In all other respects, keep it essentially the same. That's what the district attorney could do. It would be humiliating for Fannie and for Nathan Wade, her boyfriend, who takes her on cruise ships after she gave him tons of money from the people of the state of Georgia. But that doesn't mean that they would never be able to bring charges again with someone who's competent.
And if you look, Your Honor, at what that is explicitly
I'm going
what the General Assembly said.
I'm going to jump forward to the response from the state. We'll jump forward here like 10 minutes. Because I'll tell you, I think the state makes a fair response. When you first hear the charges, the claims made by his attorneys, seems like not a bad motion. Not a bad motion. Could work. Could work. Here's the state's response.
Okay, Your Honor, 1614-2, the provision that launched 1,000 demurs. The state does not and has never said ignore 1614-2 like it doesn't exist. That's just not true. Okay, 1614-2 exists. The question is, what, if anything, does it do in the context of this case? And the effort here is to turn it into a pleading requirement. That's the whole name of the game. It's not a pleading requirement. The Georgia courts have held over and over again it doesn't create a pleading requirement. Those rulings are binding. Cotton Inc., Shearson, Roe. Those are decisions of the Court of Appeals and of the Supreme Court. And they say you do not have to plead in accordance with this. You don't have to plead affirmatively.
So if these cases are on point, then Donald Trump's motion loses. What he's basically saying is, yeah, it's not in the indictment, but it doesn't have to be in the indictment. That doesn't mean the indictment is a fail. We just need to prove that and overcome that at trial. But just because it's not listed in the indictment doesn't mean that we can't proceed to trial based on this indictment and then establish that once we get to trial.
That organized crime is involved. You don't have to plead affirmatively, pecuniary gain, economic or physical threat or injury, etc. The corollary to that is you don't have to plead the negative either, which is it's not civil disobedience, etc. That's where we sit right now. Okay? That's the law. We're not starting on a blank slate here, right? And my friend, Mr. Nulowitz, he's emphasized certain things, but certain things didn't really get mentioned along the way. The United States Supreme Court, part of the argument is,
and I think
that
this
you have
is
to
accurate
interpret
too.
it as he would have it to save the constitutionality of the statute.
I think he took it and then just gave it away. But he still
No,
took it.
You don't. The United States Supreme Court looked at that question in Now versus Scheidler and said, no, there is no requirement of an economic harm or injury. That's not needed to, quote unquote, save the statute, right? Nor is there anything about the application of this statute in this case, in a First Amendment circumstance, that is required to, quote unquote, save the statute. Let me stick to the economic or pecuniary gain or economic harm, etc. First of all, there's no indication that that's a proof burden on the state. But if it were a proof burden, it is not an allegation burden. And much of the game of demur.
So what he's saying is, I don't need to even. It's debatable whether or not we even have to prove this at trial. But even if we had to prove this at trial, it doesn't mean that's a requirement that we allege it in the indictment. So even if you end up deciding that this is a necessary element for us to establish at trial, it clearly under the Georgia law does not require us to plead it in our indictment charges.
As Your Honor has seen, is always let's turn the probata into the allegata. If it's something the state would have to prove at trial, then it must be alleged. The law is absolutely to the contrary. That is not the case. We do not have to plead all our evidence. We don't have to plead in anticipation of affirmative defenses. And these are affirmative defenses. They're not pleading requirements. No Georgia case says these are pleading requirements. Right? The General Assembly hasn't even said they're affirmative defenses. And the General Assembly certainly knows how to do that. There is statute provision after provision after provision
in the criminal code where the General Assembly says this is an affirmative defense. They did not do that here. They did not take 1614(4) and say, state, you must prove economic or physical harm or injury, etc. You must prove not civil disobedience. That's not in there.
So then what is the ultimate effect of that sentence of expressing the intent of the assembly? Is it just a suggestion of a hope?
They are generally characterized as precatory words in statutory analysis, yes. And they may provide, in a close question, some guidance to Your Honor. I mean, that this is what we were thinking.
I have to tell you,
this is why we did what.
You know, I haven't loved a lot of decisions that this judge has made in this case so far, Judge Scott McAfee. But I do think he asks the right questions to each side.
What we did. But it's utterly illusory to think that this covers all the circumstances of RICO. And this is both the blessing and the curse of provisions like this. There is a somewhat similar provision in the Organized Crime Control Act of 1970. RICO is Title 9, if I recall.
All right, my friends.
So that provision. And a great deal of ink has been spilled going through, it's often referred to as Icke, the preamble to Icke, and the same arguments.
All right, my friends. I'm starting to wither here. So I'm gonna wrap up. I'm gonna wrap it up and come to a close here. I think we got an overall outline for what the arguments are. I don't know. He's sitting there in court. Like when they pan over, you can see him sitting. Nathan Wade sitting there in court. When he first got up, you can see him. There he is. So he's sitting right next to this guy. But, oh, sorry. Here it is. You guys couldn't see what So, yeah, he was there, but I guess they figured we'll give it to someone who actually knows what he's doing to argue. But, anyhow, happy Ben Franklin Day, M-Ball. I don't know what that means, but I guess I will see you all, God willing, tomorrow on Locals. And then that's going to be an afternoon, early evening, and then tomorrow night. And that's a goodlogic.locals.com. Goodlogic.locals.com. I thank you all for joining me. Sorry that I withered on you, but I think I went a little longer than I should have anyway, right? I mean, I'm past my expiry date. I'm not fresh anymore. I'm just not fresh. Not fresh. All right. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, make sure, if you do nothing else, at least stay happy. Eat some bugs. Godspeed.